Once again to the March 6, 2018 meeting of the City Council, and our staff have put together an introductory video and action.
Not done so already, please take an agenda to follow along and see what will be discussed during tonight's meeting. Also, please help yourself to some coffee and cookies available. City Council meetings have several parts: the invocation, the Pledge of Allegiance, a report from the Student Liaison, presentations, public comment, warrant register, consent calendar, public hearings, discussion or action items, City Manager's report, and City Council comments. The public comment period of the meeting allows members of the public to address the City Council regarding any items within subject matter jurisdiction of the meeting. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, and an overall time limit of 30 minutes is allocated for the public comments portion of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on the agenda for the meeting, request to speak form to the dais. After completing your form, please submit it to the staff sitting next to the city clerk prior to speaking to the council. When you are called to speak, please step to the front podium and address the City Council with your comments. You will see 3 lights: green to speak, yellow when you have 1 minute left, and red when your time has expired. At that time, your public comment period has ended and you are required to conclude your comments and save any further general comments for a future meeting. The same process should be followed if you wish to speak about an item on the agenda. You will address the City Council when that item is being discussed. The City Council meeting is being recorded and available for viewing online live or at a later time through the city's website and on Facebook Live. If you are watching the meeting via live stream through Facebook Live, you can submit written comments to be read aloud during the public comment period. The City of Lake Forest thanks you for your time and attendance at the City meeting. We hope you enjoy the meeting.
Well, thank you for coming. That was produced for us by our management services. That's Jonathan over there and Skylar over there, and Brett has disappeared. But they put that all together for you, as well as the slideshow you looked at before the meeting started. Anyhow, welcome. We'll begin tonight's meeting with the invocation, and tonight it will be led by Father Bishoy Camel from the St. Marina Coptic Orthodox Church in Irvine. Or not. Irvine. See, that's what we get for depending on Irvine. All right, Mayor Pro Tem, would you lead us? Thank you.
Father God, we thank you for this evening. Thank you for all the people that are here. Thank you, God, for our representative form of government, that people can speak about the things that are important to them and they have a voice. God, I pray that you help members of the council take in all the information and make the best decisions as possible that reflect the needs of the community. I pray, God, that you bless those that are coming home from work and that are coming on their way here. Give them safe travels. And Lord, I just pray for peace over these proceedings and that you are with us all evening. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. And tonight the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilmember Voights.
Please rise with me as we salute the greatest symbol of freedom in the world. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Closed session report from the City Attorney. Do you have anything to report?
There is no action to report tonight, Mr. Mayor.
This guy's never got anything to report. What are we doing there? We're spending all that time, and we never have anything to report. Okay, report from the Student Liaison. Sarah Dahlstrom from El Toro High School. Welcome.
Yeah, let's go Chargers.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Sarah Dahlstrom here again, reporting to you on the past and upcoming events at El Toro High School. In sports news, our girls' varsity dance team headed to nationals in Las Vegas last weekend and brought back 2 first-place trophies for both routines that they competed. Way to go, ladies. Also, congratulations to our JV and varsity winter guard and color drumline on taking 7th and 3rd place at their shows last weekend. Way to go, Chargers. In ASB news, this upcoming Monday, all of our SVUSD high schools will be gathering at Laguna Hills High School to host our annual middle school leadership retreat, where middle schools like Serrano, RSM, and Los Alisos will participate in a day full of leadership activities, workshops, and hopes for them to pursue ASB once they reach high school as well. In more ASB news, it's finally dodgeball season. So far, we have about 70 teams that have been playing dodgeball games at every snack and lunch. There's some exciting news for dodgeball this year. This year, El Toro will be hosting an SVUSD dodgeball tournament where each winning team from our school, Mission Viejo, Laguna, and Trabuco Hills High School will gather in our gym on May 4th in hopes to gain the first ever SVUSD dodgeball champion title. Good luck to our Charger dodgeball teams. That's all I have for tonight. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great evening, and as always, go Chargers.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Do you want to mention it?
I think she forgot to mention you guys won a dance championship as well, didn't you? Yeah. Oh, that was the group. Oh, I didn't hear that all grouped together. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. A couple of weeks ago, when right after the shooting in Florida, I mentioned that the city manager and I will speak with the school district superintendent and with our police chief, just to be sure that we were up to date in our measures to prevent and to deal with school shootings. And over the past 2 weeks, Deborah and I did meet with them, and then during the discussion with the chief of police, I thought it would be informative for you if we put some time aside for him to tell you the things that the police department is doing. So I'll ask for a motion to approve the presentation from the police chief.
Second.
Please vote.
What happened?
I'm sure we all said yes.
Why? I'm so sorry. Apparently, the electrovote is not cooperating, so we'll have to do roll call.
Okay. Councilman Robinson?
Aye.
Cagley?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Aye.
Councilman Voights?
Yes.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Okay, Chief?
Mayor and members of the City Council, the purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide some information regarding active shooter incidents and the plans in place to help prevent one from occurring, and our response if one does occur in the city. So as we go to our first slide here, so our first stage of active shooter is prevention efforts. So what we have in place for prevention is the school resource officer located at the school. He spends most of his time at El Toro and Serrano Intermediate. He does get around to the other elementary schools and private schools. However, he works most of the time at the high school and the intermediate school. In addition to the SRO being at the school, we have the patrol deputies on both sides of the week. So the way our deployment model works, Sunday through Wednesday, Wednesday through Saturday, each deputy is supposed to visit the schools within their assigned beat or jurisdiction, their assigned area in the city, and stop by as time allows to be a visible presence on the schools. Once again, that's all schools. So in theory, in practice, and we follow up on this, we have a deputy at the school at least twice a week with a uniformed appearance and presence. Some of the other things that are in place through the school district is text-to-tip. This is available to all the schools, and it allows students and faculty to basically, exactly what it sounds like, text-to-tip to the school administration regarding any behavior that might be disturbing or something that might be threatening in nature. It's confidential, and is routed to school administrators and to the school resource officer. So once those tips are received, the school resource officer will vet through that information, do some initial follow-up, and if that is quickly becoming something that is requires more resources, then we have what we call the Sheriff's SMART team, the School Mobile Assessment Resource Team. This is a team that's stationed right out of here out of our Saddleback Station in Lake Forest, and the sole purpose of this team is a threat assessment type approach. So it'll take that information that it receives from the SRO and the school administrators, and they will do a threat assessment on that. They work with and assess the individuals and groups that might pose that risk to the community or the school. They also investigate all violent crimes that occur on school campuses. So that's kind of what is in place. So as far as prevention, school administrators, faculty, text the tip through students, the SRO, the SMART team, and it's all basically situational awareness and educating people to, if you see something, to say something, right? You don't discount that information. You let somebody that's got the training and experience vet through that information. The next slide, as we move on, is education, what I was just talking about. So currently, the Saddleback Valley Unified School District, in conjunction with our school resource officer, has been providing presentations at all the schools in the city of Lake Forest. To date, Foothill Ranch Elementary and El Toro High School have had a presentation where they meet together, they go over the school's policies, they discuss possible scenarios, and they go over and show, it's a video that was made several years ago in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department and the school districts, and it's basically similar to Run, Fight, Hide. What do you do during an active shooter situation? So in addition to that, the Sheriff's Department also provides, let me back up a step, a lot of this is geared towards the schools, and that's what I'm focusing on right now because that's kind of the hot topic. But the Sheriff's Department's active shooter scenario can be applied anywhere. It could be a church, it could be a business, it could be City Hall, it could be a school. The general plan is set so that you can apply it anywhere that it takes place, not just one location. So on those lines, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, the Sheriff's Department came in and provided this same type of training to the employees here at City Hall in case something happened here, and what should they do and how can they defend themselves and react to that. So that's part of the educational campaign, once again, of trying to make everyone aware of what's going on around them. So some things that we're doing within the Sheriff's Department, training, right? Deputies have been issued maps of the schools in the city in the various locations. They've been trained and briefed on what their role is and how to respond. They know the entry points to the schools. They know the different buildings and locations. So as they're being given direction, they know where to go to that school. The training consists of tactics within a classroom setting, scenario training with role players and actors, and also simulator training at our own Artemis Defense Institute right here in Lake Forest off of Bake Parkway. Right, that's all simulator based. In addition, we recently completed an active shooter exercise at Saddleback Church. It was in the late evening hours. This was done a couple weeks ago, but it included deputies not only from Lake Forest, but from Rancho Santa Margarita, Mission Viejo, and the unincorporated areas of the county. Basically, anything that would respond and be available out of the Saddleback substation participated in this training. And even though it was held at the church, once again, it's designed that regardless of the location, the same training would apply. So in addition to that, there is a joint plan with Orange County Fire Authority. This plan helps to designate hot and warm zones, casualty collection points, force protection groups, and establish a unified command so that everybody's working together and on the same page if an incident does occur. And then in addition to that, within Lake Forest, obviously every deputy is armed, but in addition to that, deputies have what we have a CERT team. It's called the Critical Incident Response Team. This is a unit that was initially developed after the North Hollywood bank shootout 10 plus years ago, right? And it allows deputies to have more firepower quicker. You don't wait for the SWAT team to arrive. So we have select deputies throughout the Lake Forest, Mission Viejo, Rancho, the whole area that have the AR-15 type rifles as a response. And they can provide a more immediate response to contain a situation, but now with the active shooter training, they go in and take out the threat. That's the goal. So that's what all the training is geared for. That's what they practice for. We hope to prevent it, but ultimately, 100% success rate would be great, but if we're not able to hold that, we have the training and the plan in place to address that threat, regardless of where it happens. Let's see here. So the other thing I'd like to promote while I'm here is our social media pages. So OCSD, Lake Forest Police Services. You can follow anything going on with the city and police services on Instagram and social media, Facebook, and those things. Is there any I have one more topic to talk about, but I was going to stop and see if there's any questions regarding the active shooter real quick.
Does council have any questions?
I do.
Mayor Pro Tem?
The text-to-tip, is that one solitary number for every school, or does each school have its own number?
I believe each school has its own number.
Do you have anything like that in place for, like, places of worship, in case we have an active shooter situation in a church? Because that has been happening around the country as well.
The text-to-tip is designed as a preventative measure. If somebody hears something or a student talking about any type of threats or disturbing behavior, they can send that off to an administrator for it to be vetted through and to be investigated. As far as I know, there are no text-to-tip type things set up through a worship center that route to us as the Sheriff's Department. I don't see why a church might not have that set up on their own, but I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Councilman Robbins?
Could you explain a little bit of your relationship with federal agencies, so the FBI? That's been some of the concern with what occurred in Florida, that there were a lot of FBI tips that weren't being followed up on from a local perspective. I'm just sharing what I heard in the media. I don't know what validity to give this, but what relationship do you have with the FBI as an example, or any other federal agencies in trying to assess potential threats and try to be prepared for those that might arise?
Thank you. That's a good question. The Orange County Sheriff's Department has a great working relationship with federal agencies. We have another unit called the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center, OCIAC, that doesn't just deal with information on a terrorist level, it deals with any type of local threats. So if there's anything going through a federal agency that's routed to our jurisdiction and our service area, they can route it through that agency where it can be vetted and investigated and then ultimately pushed down to the deputies in the field. But in addition to that, we have no knowledge as far as all the tips that the FBI might get, right? Only when they bring us into it are we aware of it. But I would tell you that does happen. And matter of fact, it happened last week where the FBI called us up. They were at a house. They had a tip. They took it as far as they can do in the limited powers they have. And then our deputy stepped in and conducted a mental health evaluation of the person and ultimately took that person in for a hold. So those things do happen. When it works, it's successful. But obviously, I don't know the extent of the tips. I don't have access to the FBI's database to know how many tips are in the queue and how many they're getting to. We have to wait for them to contact us for that, any tips that go through the FBI or any other federal agency.
Thank you very much. And if the next question starts to affect tactical response or anything like that, feel free to ignore it. But some of the frustration, again, with the horrific tragedy in Florida there was the potential for an officer not moving in once it was identified that there was a problem there. And I understand from the last slide you said that that's what the CERT team is kind of prepared for. Would the SRO go in if they were on their own, or do they have to wait for the CERT team? What's our process here? Because it seemed like there was some unknowns there in Florida, and there's differing opinions now on whether or not the first individual that heard was supposed to kind of be prepared for what might come out the door rather than rushing in. So I'm just kind of curious as to what our procedures are here.
Good question. So the Sheriff's Department's their goal is to eliminate the threat. So if the SRO is if we're going to use the school as the example, if it's occurring at the school and the SRO is at the school, then he's going to engage the threat as best he can, or at least try to contain that threat till more deputies can get there to help him engage that threat. It all depends on, there's lots of factors on weaponry, location, there's lots of factors. We train to go in, is the bottom line. If a deputy chooses to wait a minute or two for another deputy to show up, that's at the deputy's discretion, but they're all trained to go in. It's not a black and white answer there.
Sure, and I can appreciate that. I know that you're having to make those assessments as you go, but I just kind of wanted to understand what our general procedures are. And you answered that to my satisfaction. Thank you.
Councilman Voigt?
I want to first say that how fortunate we are as the City of Lake Forest to have the Orange County Sheriff Department patrol and keep our citizens safe, because your academy is one of the highest ranked academies in the nation, and so I feel a sense of ease that you guys are out there protecting us when we put our heads down at night. I think that we all owe the Orange County Sheriff Department and Orange County Fire Authority a little prayer and thank them for what they're doing and ask for protection. But thank you for that. There was an incident at El Toro High School and a lockdown, and I know that the parents were very relieved to see the quick response and the overwhelming response by the Orange County Sheriff Department. Can you maybe give a little example of that? And then the Orange County Sheriff Department, along with the Orange County or Saddleback Unified School District, actually has locks on their doors, the slide locks. So actually, when we had to explain the lockdown, the school campus was locked down while the investigators and the Sheriff Department scanned the campus. Is that correct?
So there's two incidents that I'm aware of.
Friday.
One was last Friday, and there's shortly after the Florida shooting, there was a Snapchat that went around of in a threatening nature, indicating there might be an incident at El Toro High School. That incident was quickly vetted through, investigated by the SRO and the SMART team, and was found to be, it was discredited. They talked to the student, they talked to the student's parents, but ultimately that incident was discredited and not a credible threat to anyone. However, that Snapchat video kept making the rounds and stirring up more panic and alarm. And as a result, last Friday, a student reported hearing some loud pops in the area. We were fortunate enough, the SRO happened to be about 30 feet away from the area she was saying the pops were coming from, and the school went on lockdown. He investigated, interviewed the student. None of the other students heard that noise, and it was quickly cleared. The incident we had yesterday would be a suspicious looking pole that was driven into the ground that nobody knew anything about it. And so we ended up calling the bomb squad to come out and x-ray the ground underneath that pole. Ended up just being a kind of like a flag banner stake that stakes into the ground on one end and has a little holder on the other for like one of those feather banners. But no one was familiar with it. It was a shiny chrome, stainless steel type material that just looked real out of place. So to be precautionary, the school went ahead and sheltered in place. We had the bomb squad come out and x-ray it. It was nothing. It was cleared and removed, and there was no harm. But that's the type of response that we're going to be overly cautious to make sure things are not a threat when they're pointed out to us.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. When Deborah and I met with the school superintendent, we asked her, how happy are you with police services? She said extremely happy. And we asked her, is there anything else we can possibly do to assist you? And she said no. She thought, you guys were on the ball and doing everything she expected. So thank you very much. There's nothing more important. Job number one for the city is public safety, and there's nothing really more important than the safety of our kids. So Deborah and I, and I'm sure everybody, are happy to know that both the school district and the police are up to date and looking at not simply responding but preventing it to the extent that's possible. So thank you again from all of us. Public comments?
Sir, if I can interrupt you, I'm sorry. City manager wanted me to comment on one more thing.
Go ahead.
Just to tack on to this, and that's a little bit of the homelessness issue within the city.
Sure.
So as we've discussed in the past, the city has a homeless liaison officer that has been worked in the city for years, and to date, over the last 3 years, has found shelter and housing for over 75 individuals. Right? Quite an accomplishment. That deputy is retiring at the end of the month. That's Deputy Chet Parker. But in anticipation of him leaving, and in anticipation of the influx of homeless coming to the city from the closure of the riverbed, we hired, or didn't hire, we created a second homeless liaison officer position to be trained by Chet, and so we would have 2 deputies out there doing the work as one, and cover 6 days a week instead of 4 days a week, in the helps of handling the influx and receiving good training. That's been going well. The difficult thing is balancing providing resources to those in need and then dealing with the enforcement side for the chronic homeless who choose to be homeless. And that's what we're dealing with. We're doing a lot more enforcement as of right now, as opposed to trying to find resources. Most of the people we're encountering right now don't want the resources. But in addition to these 2 resources, right, just the 2 HLO deputies, our patrol deputies respond to calls for service regarding homeless as well. They route that information on to the HLOs. And we also have deputies out on bicycles on our bike team, hitting the creek beds and the trails and things like that to stir up this stuff so it doesn't take a hold like it did in the riverbed. So those are kind of some of the efforts that we're doing within police services to address the homelessness in the city.
Council, any questions on the homeless?
Can you tell Officer Chet Parker he cannot retire?
Denied.
I'd love to, but he's a good friend of mine, and I'm real happy for him.
Yeah, he's done a great job. And I remember one time you were telling me a story about a family who were homeless because they were trying to help a son who'd gotten into a little bit of trouble. So they lost their home. They were living paycheck to paycheck and living under a shrub, and Chet just found a place for him. They had to separate the family, but I mean, he really worked to get the family off the street. And I'm so glad that we have dedicated, officers like that are really looking out for the homeless.
Any other questions?
I do. Orange County Sheriff Department, along with the City of Lake Forest, was actually the first city within the Sheriff Department that actually brought forth in a homeless liaison officer before this crisis of epidemic proportions hit the cities in your Orange County Sheriff Department. So the fact is that we were ahead of the ball in doing this, and I think this is our second liaison officer we've had. Third. And they've just done countless hard work and great job in trying to get people back on their feet again, as far as going and getting people their identification cards so that they can get a P.O. box so they can start getting checks and their monthly money checks coming in. So you guys go far beyond the call of duty, so thank you so much.
Just, I had a question. Since a large proportion of the homeless people we're getting at the moment came from the riverbed, and my understanding was most of them who were there had been offered services, so these are the people who didn't want services who are coming to us. Should we be locking our doors? Should we be more concerned about burglaries or robberies going up as a result of the influx, or do you think it's not a problem?
Mayor, you should know better than ask that question, but it's a great segue. Here in Lake Forest, we advertise to don't make it easy, right? We lock our doors no matter what. We don't leave things in plain view. We lock our car doors. We leave our windows up. We shut our garage doors. We don't make it easy, no matter who it is in the population. I can't cast a negative light of the homelessness as far as whether they're committing crime. I'm sure there's some that do, but I know there's some that don't. So I'm not going to cast that general light across the whole population. Enforcement, when I talk about enforcement measures, I talk about enforcing things for trespassing, blocking sidewalks, standing in the medians, being in the creek bed, things like this that we don't want them to get a foothold and make a home. But of course, anybody can commit those types of crimes, right? So I would recommend don't make it easy. Lock everything up.
In fact, the Don't Make It Easy program, remind us what the reduction in crime rate was when we pushed that program last year.
That's a tough number to recall off the top of my head. When we're talking specific property crimes, I don't know the straight reduction.
It was
off the top of my head,
very
yes.
significant. I don't
I
remember
apologize.
myself.
I know overall the Part 1 crimes dropped 16% last year. But I couldn't sit there and tell you that's all property crimes or not.
Okay, well, once again, thank you very much. We're now at the public comment portion of the meeting. And how many speakers do we have?
18, Your Honor.
18. So the public comments part of the meeting runs for 30 minutes. If you go over 30 minutes, then the public comment segues to the end of the meeting. So with that, let's have our first speaker.
Mike Black, followed by Bernie Esposito.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Mike Black. I've lived in Lake Forest for about 12 years. I'm here tonight. I've only been to these meetings maybe 3 times. And I have to say I've been really disappointed in what I'm seeing here. I've heard several of you talk on occasions about it's okay to agree to disagree, but we all got to be on the same page. We're all supposed to be working together. You're supposed to be kind of like, as you called it yourself, Mayor, a gang of 5 now, not a gang of 3. I would hope that that meant you're all on the same page and you're trying to, even if you don't agree with each other, you're supposed to try to find a way to get along. Every time that I've come to these meetings, there's been somebody to come up from behind me and attack Scott Voights. I don't understand it. I've known Scott for only about 3 years now, and I've become very good friends with him. He's one of my best friends. And I tend to know his character, from my point of view anyway. He's one of the nicest, kindest, most honest people I've ever met. The other night, I actually went online and watched a recent city council meeting from Irvine. And behold, one of these, as Scott called the man here a few weeks ago, a hacker, showed up at that meeting, not here, but at Irvine, and started attacking him, started attacking Scott Voights. Well, I have to commend Don Wagner, because about 15 seconds into it, he did what I would think everybody on that council should do. If not you, then somebody else. He shut the man down right now. Said, that's not what we're here for. We're here to make positive, to make improvements, to move forward as a city, as a community. And I'm not seeing that happening here anymore. The few times I've been here, I always thought good things went on here. You know, but now that I've been coming to a few of these, I'm finding out there's so much dissension, and you know, I wasn't here, so I don't know the statistics on this one, but 2 people that I know that were here came to me and said, hey, you ain't going to believe this. The mayor called the chief of police a liar today in the council meeting. Now, I don't know what that was about or why or if, but if that's the case, we can't have that either. Any more than we have that man coming up here and calling him a liar, than him being chastised for getting angry and losing his temper and going back to the man calling him a hack. You know, I'd have been out of my chair. I know Scott can't do that, but I'd have been out of my chair. And for council members or mayors or anybody in this room to call the police chief a liar, for whatever the reason may have been, it shouldn't happen in here. You know, if you got something to take up with him, you take it up somewhere else. But you don't do that in front of these people. You know? And like I've always said, you know, I respect, I've been in law enforcement. I've been in Vietnam. And I found that the only reason I came home from Vietnam or in law enforcement was because people had my back when I was there, and because I made a point of having their back when I was there. And that's why some of us came home. Unfortunately, a lot of us didn't. But I did because of the people that had my back. If you don't think it's easy, go put that uniform on for a week.
Red light's on.
Okay, thank you. Put that uniform on for a week. Put it on for a day. You might have a different opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bernie Esposito, followed by John Garrison.
In Lake Forest, we believe in the First Amendment. So we give to you the right to come here and criticize us. And if you didn't have that right, it wouldn't be the United States of America. So anyhow, welcome.
Good evening, Council. My name is Bernie Esposito. I've been a resident of Lake Forest for about 17 years and specifically lived in the Montberry neighborhood for over 15 years. I'm here this evening to speak a little bit about the proposal for Montberry Park. And as I understand it, there's some talk about making that into a dog run or dog park. None of us that I've spoken with have received any type of notice. I just happened to find the information by a neighbor who happened to talk to somebody in the city. And, of course, I was in the park the other day and saw a survey crew, and they gave me a little bit of information, too. Our homes that surround Montbury Park are elevated from the park. And as such, the noise from the park is amplified because it rises. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we had a man that was giving canine obedience classes in Montbury Park. And he had about 10, 12 dogs there, and the barking and noise level was just incredible. And he finally left, fortunately. I don't know how that happened, but he did. The other concern I and my neighbors have is parking. Right now we have, when you turn into North Crest, the barber shop in the strip zone there, all the barbers park on North Crest, and they kind of block that entrance to the park. So with that happening, we're going to have a lot of traffic spilling over onto Montbury, onto Rushford, and various other streets in the community. And it's going to be a huge impact for us. Right now, that park is a great neighborhood park. We have barbecues, we have benches, we have a lot of amenities there for families to enjoy themselves with their children, which I see a lot because my house backs up to the park. So I have a pretty good view, and we see a lot of families there enjoying the park, doing a little bit of barbecuing and things like that. And unfortunately, if we turn that into a dog park, that's all going to go away. The residents are going to suffer and be impacted by that to that degree. I talked to one of the neighbors, and there's a few of them here that are going to speak tonight, so I'm going to try to be brief and give them a chance to speak. But we really are resistant to having that go from Montbury Park to Montbury Dog Kennel. And it's just going to have a tremendous negative impact on our community as a whole. And I'm hoping that we can find some alternatives to that. One of the alternatives that I would suggest is the park over on Regency there, which serves now as a part-time soccer field, but it doesn't impact homes and residents in the area.
Time's up. Your time's up.
Okay,
red light's on. Thank you. For those of you from Montbury, we had a neighborhood improvement program in which the city held workshops for 10 different parks, one of which was Montbury. And at that workshop, which was attended by about a dozen people, the idea of the dog run at Montbury Park came up. So that idea then, and nobody there was opposed to it. In fact, it was a popular idea at that meeting. Those recommendations for all 10 parks, not just Montbury, but for all 10 parks, will go to the Parks Commission, and then there'll be public hearings at the Parks Commission. They will make a recommendation. It will come to the council, and then the council will have hearings. So you'll have plenty of opportunity to address that issue. I don't mean to stifle your coming before us tonight, but no one's going ahead and building a dog run before we go through all the necessary steps that the city takes. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor and City Council, my name is Don Garrison. I live in Lake Forest on Montbury Drive, right next to the park. Bernie happens to be my neighbor, and he coordinated all of this, so there's a lot of us here. And I'll just echo what he said. From a security standpoint, we're concerned with what happens to the security of our neighborhood with so many people potentially that would come to a dog park from outside of the neighborhood. 2, safety to not only the dogs and the owners, because in dog parks, more so than an open space, there are a number of dog attacks that happen to the pet and or the owner when they try to break them up. That's a big concern. Noise is also a concern, and the spread of virus and disease in dogs through their feces in the park, because many people neglect for whatever reason to pick up after their dog, and that creates a a very negative environment for the pet owner, the pets and the pet owners. And that's it from me. I'll make it short.
Okay, thank you.
Steve Dipple, followed by Jonathan Scott.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Steve Dipple. I'm a resident of Montberry as well. I've been there for over 35 years, and I'm also a dog owner. To echo what both Bernie and Don said, I've got the same concerns with regards to the traffic issues as well as the sanitation issues. But one other issue that I think is even more important is safety. I was a recent victim of a dog attack up at Lake Forest Sports Park. Some of you may have seen it on TV. It was on Channel 9 and Channel 2. And it was by an uncontrolled mastiff. And that dog caused extensive injuries to my dog as well as injured myself. And my fear is, what if this was a little child or someone else or another dog? And I think that should be something that should be taken into consideration before, going forward with a dog park or even a dog run.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And as I said earlier, there are many stages that this thing has to go through, and that was a preliminary stage.
Yeah, I did participate in the one of the workshops. I was online. Unfortunately, the video and audio quality was really bad, so you really couldn't see what was going on. And I did make some input on the online viewers were allowed to type things in through Facebook, but unfortunately, I guess it wasn't seen. But I did say...
Well, yeah, in fact, the online, those of you who participated online, that is going to be incorporated into the report. The people who were there put those green dots in it.
Yeah, it's so hard to see. It was really tough.
Yeah, but the online comments are not ignored. They will put them together with what the people said there. But if, enough of you are concerned about it, I'm pretty sure the Parks Commission won't go ahead. So thank you for coming tonight.
Mr. Dipple,
Yes.
how's your dog doing? And I heard that you had fallen and hurt yourself, too.
Yeah, basically, if you saw the attack, it was caught on the security cameras at Lake Forest Sports Park. Basically, the dog came out of nowhere. It was a young woman with 3 little kids, and she was tending to one of her children. Unfortunately, she didn't have a pull of the dog's leash. Hit us, full speed ahead. Got my dog in the rear end. Took 3 good chunks out of her. 3 surgeries later, $2,400 in vet bills, and the force of the attack yanked my arm back, which caused a rotator cuff injury. So I'm right now going through physical therapy up here on the street.
Get well, and we're sorry that happened to you.
No, thank you very much.
better
Appreciate it.
Next.
Jonathan Scott, followed by Jean Klein.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Scott. My wife and I, Jean Klein, live in the Montberry community, and we're the original owners of our home at 26686 Warwick Court. I would like to thank you and the City Council, Stephen, and other citizens for your time. It's my understanding, as we were all talking about, that there's consideration for repurposing Montberry Park from a passive park into a dog run. This evening, I'm going to speak about technical issues. 3 things: noise level at Del Toro Road, topography of Montberry Park, sound levels, and best practice recommendations. The City of Lake Forest says that they're committed to ensure an optimum quality of life for our community by providing innovative and efficient services. There are 9 homes that surround Montberry Park. Right now, we've lived in our home since 1985 and observed an increase in road noise from El Toro Road over the last 35 years. Our backyard faces the park, and we're approximately 310 feet away from El Toro Road. Development at Glenkine Ranch and up San Diego Road increases road noise. In past years, we've been able to keep our windows open. We can't do that anymore. Topography. El Toro Road is at a lower elevation than the 9 houses that surround the park. The park is cut as a bowl, concave, which acts as a speaker projecting sound to 9 homes around the perimeter. Same effect as in a football stadium. Dog park would increase noise levels over ambient road noise at El Toro from dogs barking, owners calling and commanding their dogs, projecting noise to the 9 perimeter homes. Sound is measured in decibels. Many dogs are capable of barking at a sound level intensity level at 100 dBs. Put this into perspective, a healthy hearer can hear at a threshold of 0. A lawnmower produces 90 dBs. So a barking dog at full amplitude produces more. One barking dog produces more noise than than a lawnmower. Best practice. Through just a little bit of research done online, University of California Davis program, Veterinary Behavioral Medicine, researcher by the name of Benjamin Hart identified that best practices in park locations where noise from dogs are an issue: do not establish a dog park immediately adjacent to residential property lines. Consider elevation difference between park and surrounding area, not in a valley, placed on a hilltop. San Diego's general plan calls for excludes dog parks in any small park adjacent to residential uses at all. They have a noise associated with dog parks potentially exceed property line noise ordinance limits of 50 dBAs within 225 feet. Final location of dog parks will not be permitted until final mapping. There's 5 dog parks: Lake Forest, Laguna Woods, LA Paws Dog Park in Mission Viejo, Irvine Center Dog Park, and Bark Park in Costa Mesa. If you look at all those facilities, there's very few houses that surround those parks at all. The only one is up here in Lake Forest. Recommendations: identify potential sites outside of residential areas and invite the community to raise funds to support it. I'm asking the City Council to stay committed to ensure an optimum quality of life for our 9 houses surrounding Montgomery Park, consider repurposing the park from its current designation, and keep it as a passive park. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jean Klein, followed by Marc Amendola.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Jean Klein. I've lived in Montberry for 33 years, since 1985. I live in one of the homes adjacent to the Montberry Park. This issue was not a public notice, just to let you know that we found out about it through other neighbors. In 1985, the land that is now Montberry Park was owned by Montberry Homeowners Association. When our Montberry Homeowners Association neighborhood originally voted and approved this park between 1990 and 1991, the Montberry Association sold the land for the park with the specific stipulation that the park would always remain a passive park. That was the reason that we voted for that, not an active park with activities or dogs running and barking. Montberry was very clear about the intent of keeping the neighborhood a safe and quiet neighborhood. Additionally, it is my understanding that the Montberry Association still owns the perimeter of the Montberry Park. I hope you understand that I love dogs, but I do not want to hear them continuously barking, especially around dinner hour when I'm wanting to have a nice quiet meal outdoors. There are 9 Montberry houses that are adjacent to the park, and several closely aligned that are valued at between $900,000 and $1.2 million. These homes have been able to retain their value over the years because of the pride of ownership and concern of each other's neighbors. We want to maintain the value of these homes. It is the intent of our homeowners to maintain a quiet and safe neighborhood. As noted by other people, there are several dog parks in the area that have been correctly located in areas away from the close proximity to homes. Issues regarding out-of-control dogs off leashes and leaving excrement where people might sit or walk has been a concern at time in the past at Montberry Park. The association has assisted in curtailing some of the misuse of leash laws and dog dropping cleanups. A dog park should be located in an area away from the earshot of homes in order to meet requirements to be the best neighbor. We all want to have a beautiful, pleasant environment which we all can enjoy that is safe, quiet, and most of all, a friendly Lake Forest neighborhood. We want Montberry Park to remain a passive park that the Montberry homeowners at the lake and the city of Lake Forest intended at its inception. Montberry Park.
Time's up.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you.
your time.
Could we have somebody who's not from Montberry Park? Because we're running out of time, and I know there are speakers, and we've heard from about 6. Oh, is it all Montberry Park?
Well, I'm sorry, Your Honor, they don't specify what they want to talk about. It's just under public comment.
This is taking up time.
Well, I want to hear from everybody, but there are no other topics there.
Just check the public comments.
Okay, then just call on.
Marc Amendola, followed by Jon Shepler.
Good evening.
Welcome.
My name is Marc Amendola, and I'd like to pause for a second and thank Mike Black. Where are you, Mike? Thank you for your words. Anything I can say tonight would only compliment what you've already said, and thank you for your service. And to all the women and men who have served as a veteran, you're a hero to me. I'm here simply to say thank you to Scott, Councilman Voigt. You're a hero in my eyes, Scott. You put up with an inordinate amount of slander, accusations that is, for most, intolerable. It's a shame and it's an embarrassment that this has to happen. The fact that you persevere, that you're here, that it doesn't keep you away from doing your duty, just resonates deep in my heart. You understand leadership. You understand that you're going to deal with those attacks to you, while putting the well-being of Lake Forest first and foremost is heavy on your heart, and you're doing that, and I thank you very much. Others would not. They would have run away from such attacks. You understand leadership. You understand you have to put that aside and continue to lead. For those of us who were in the military, especially during the 80s, I was in the Army. At that point, the Army defined the 4 C's of leadership: candor, competence, commitment, and courage. And you exemplify every one of those. You deal with things that none of us in this room have to do. Just getting to work is infinitely harder than any of us have to deal with. And apart from having to deal with your handicap, you got to deal with daily slander towards you and your family. I was lucky enough to come to Lake Forest more than 40 years ago, thanks to my parents. And I was a 5th grader at Santiago Elementary School. And I take great pride in that because now, 40 years after that, 40 years plus, my grandson's there. And that's an awesome thing. My children have gone through Santiago, Serrano, El Toro High School, where I graduated. And I'm really happy tonight to see so many El Toro High School people that are in this room. I didn't know this was going to happen. Mwah. That's just a nice thing. I love that. And the work I do with great members of this city, with the Veterans Ministry, where we deal with handicapped folks, especially the work we do at the VA Center in Long Beach in the Spinal Cord Injury Unit. It's just incredible work, and you really set an example to the people that we have, that we work with on a daily basis.
Time's up. Red light.
Scott, so many more things I want to say to you, but let's end by where I started, by saying thank you, sir. It's been an honor.
Jon Shepler, followed by Tony Wroten.
Welcome.
Howdy. My name is Jon Shepler. I'm the laboratory director of Sunstar Laboratories. We're an environmental testing laboratory very close to us here this evening, just a couple buildings down. We've been testing soil, water, and air for hazardous waste now for over 20 years. The state of California has approved cannabis for consumption, both medically and possibly public use in the state of California. Starting effective in July here, there will be mandatory testing of that. We would like to expand our laboratory testing capabilities to include testing for cannabis for both heavy metals and pesticides. Our only intent is not to buy, not to sell, not to store it any length of great time, simply to test to make sure that the product being consumed is as safe and as clean as possible. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Tony Wroten, followed by Tammy Sutton.
Hi, Council. Welcome. Thank you. My name is Tony Wroten, and I work with a company that we supply all the analytical testing equipment for these cannabis laboratories. And just as a perspective, I travel all over Southern California to every city and work with many, many, many labs every day. And so the change of and the way that things are changing in the cannabis industry has gone from really it's not this dark business anymore. This is very, very large business. The people I work with on a daily basis are business people. They're business, and we're talking people that are coming into these cities with millions of dollars. I mean, every laboratory that I help set up represents probably close to $3 million in investments. So this is not a fly-by-night. This is very, very significant business. So I think it would, benefit Lake Forest to take a seriously look at this. Just in the testing lab arena, it's a very, what they call light industry business, and fits the city very nicely. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Carlo Tamayino, sitting there at the end, is our head of economic development, and you could talk to him about businesses.
I'd love to spend some time with him.
Next.
Tammy Sutton, followed by Frantard.
Welcome.
Hi. My name's Tammy Sutton, and I'm also a neighbor in Montberry, and my home backs up to Montberry Park. Been a resident of Lake Forest for about 30 years now, and I concur with all my neighbors as far as the use of the park as a passive park. Over the past few years, I've noticed people walking their dogs on leash, children on bikes and trikes, frisbee playing, touch football, picnics, and even winter prom, and pictures from the high school students at El Toro and Trabuco High. But I think with the noise factor that the dog park would definitely cause issues with all of the homeowners around the surrounding park. But I would respectfully request that maybe we could have some animal control more on the park area. I noticed that there's a lot of dog attacks. Children have been impacted with riding their tricycles because the dogs that are not on leash are chasing the children. So I would just request now that we have more animal control around the park. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the city manager, you can do that, can't you? Direct. Okay, thank you. Any more?
Frantard, followed by March for Our Lives.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Fran Tardif, and my remarks concern a topic from the last meeting, animal services for the city of Lake Forest. I've been volunteering at the Pet Adoption Center now for a few months, and I've also volunteered at Irvine Animal Center for 18 years. I want to commend the council on trying to find alternatives to the county shelter for Lake Forest animals. And I'm here to emphasize that you actually have the beginnings of an excellent city shelter already established in Lake Forest. The Pet Adoption Center is off to a great start and already providing the quality care that the residents of the city want and expect. Granted, the Orange County shelter is trying to improve, but even with its new facility, it will still be governed by a bureaucracy bound by regulations that make it difficult, if not impossible, to change. The fact is that by its very nature, Orange County will always be a kill shelter, and that will always be unacceptable. On the other hand, Pet Adoption Center is clean, well-run. The dogs are walked, fed, cared for by April Josephson and devoted volunteers in something close to a home setting. Medically, the animals get outstanding care from local vets. So these are my suggestions, and I'm offering this strictly on my own, for my own opinion, and have not been asked to make these remarks by anyone at Pet Adoption Center. Firstly, I would hope that you will focus your efforts on the existing PAC and develop a Lake Forest animal care system. I say system because it does not have to be a self-contained shelter with all services in one location. For instance, continue to contract with local vets for medical care. It is a very common practice. Choose from that menu of services by the county for your policed animal control services, and contract with the county to gradually transition all the Lake Forest animals to PAC. And we're not talking, if the statistics are correct, we're not talking about a lot of animals. Put your money toward expanding the space for PAC to accommodate cats and a few more dogs. Also, hire a couple more full-time staff for the 8 hours a day the shelter is open. Of course, these and other details need to be worked out, and ultimately the costs are to be determined. But I almost cried when I heard about the $600,000 for the county shelter, which could have gone a long way toward developing a Lake Forest shelter. What I'm suggesting is not operationally complex, it just requires commitment. And April and her volunteers are fully capable of handling this model of a city shelter with appropriate additional resources from the city. This is an outline of a transition, not something that will happen overnight, but please do not ignore the gem you have right here in your midst. Put your heads together and make a Lake Forest shelter happen for the city, its people, and its pets. And I just want to add that I know your hearts are in the right place. I hope you'll come to agree that this is the best course of action for the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's amazing. You read it in just about 3 minutes, so very good.
Yeah, well, I practiced.
Did you practice? So
Mr.
thank
Mayor,
you very much.
it's now 30 minutes for public comments.
Okay, how many more comments do we have?
5.
I move that we continue on with the last 5.
Second.
Just try to briefly come before us.
Can we vote electronically now, or are we still doing it?
Yes, I fixed it.
Okay. Okay, so vote, please.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, next.
March for Our Lives, followed by Angie Allen.
Hi, good evening.
Welcome.
My name is Amber Saldana. I'm a resident of Lake Forest. I've lived here only a year. I have a first grader who goes to La Madera, and her classroom faces the parking lot. And I'm also a kindergarten teacher. Myself, students, parents, community members are all organizing a march happening in San Clemente that is affiliated with the nationwide March for Our Lives movement that's happening in Washington, D.C. on the 24th of March. And the agenda basically is just to demand that safety in schools becomes a priority, and also in our communities. And I'm here to encourage community members and city council members to attend and walk alongside of us. So like I said, it's a national movement, and it's happening in D.C. It's happening in over 488 locations. There's one in Irvine, there's one in Hemet, there's one in Riverside, there's L.A., they're happening all over the place. Ours is happening in San Clemente, hopefully in front of the public library, but that location may change depending on permits that are necessary. We have social media set up, we have an Instagram, we have a Facebook group, and I just want to take this opportunity to just urge local government to join us and just to make it known that this is an important, we've already talked about it tonight, this is really important to us as a country, that our children's safety is a priority. I'm happy to hear that it's happening locally. The reason my sister and I decided to organize this march is because my daughter's classroom, I swear, it's right there. It's right there. And so we just really value everything that this march stands for. There's a lot of underlying issues. There is the issue of bullying. There is the issue of mental health. There is the issue of security. There is the issue of gun reform. But all of that is only going to be changed if we show as a country that this is important. So I have some flyers with our Instagram on them, and then you can also find out the Facebook event through the Instagram, and it has all of the information for the march. And on social media, we will update after our meeting on Thursday night if the location is going to change. So where should I put these?
Give them to Carla there. And you didn't tell us what time it is.
Okay.
March 24th?
It's from 9 to 11.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody wants to get a copy can get them from Carlo. Next.
Angie Allen, followed by Melody Basada.
Good evening.
Welcome.
My name's Angie Allen. I'm a retired postmaster, and I've lived here in Lake Forest for over 30 years. The other day, My question is tonight, the other day I went to a Look, Learn, and Live in Lake Forest event, and during your speech, Mr. Mayor, you said we would be investing $12 million new dollars on traffic improvements. Where will that new money be coming from? And will that money be building our new Civic Center, Performing Arts Center, and Senior Center? Those are my questions.
If you look at last week's the strategic planning package on the agenda on the City Council website, under, I don't know, Keith, do you remember which agenda item it is?
It's the only one.
It was the only agenda item. Last
In
week,
which table it is? There's a series of tables, about
There's
6
table
tables.
two.
Table 2?
Yes.
Table 2 lists exactly where the items are being spent on the traffic.
Okay, and the question is, where's the $12 million new dollars coming from? That's what you said in your speech.
Well, yeah, 12 million.
New dollars. I was just wondering where those new dollars were coming from.
Well,
I mean, do I have to look at a table? Can I just have the answer now?
well, yeah. Keith, you want to explain it to her?
it's not $12 million new dollars. It's fund balance that we have.
I was only going by what the mayor said.
Okay, so it's current fund balance that has been saved away, and that's where the money is coming for the infrastructure. And then you asked a second question. The money coming for the Civic Center is a separate fund, and that's coming from the impact fees for the development that's happening in the community.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Melody Basada, followed by Heiko Peschel.
Hi, welcome.
Hello, thank you. I'm a brand new resident to Lake
welcome
Forest.
again.
My husband and I just closed escrow on our dream home on Montberry Drive, and I promise to offer a different perspective, although I echo everyone else's. For several years, I was on a board for a dog park group in the Bay Area. We would meet with a Parks and Rec manager every quarter to talk about what was and was not working with our local dog parks. As a dog owner myself, I was eager to make the dog park program a success. What I learned is that the dog parks are located in more commercial areas were successful, but the dog parks that were tucked into the grassy parks of regular neighborhoods were ultimately closed to off-leash dogs. We all see the dog parks as an idyllic place that brings dogs and neighbors together, but they can also be very loud, scary, and dangerous. Instead of connecting us with our community, they can divide us. The thing about dogs is that it's impossible to prevent them 100% of the time from becoming aggressive. And the neighbors in the nearby homes will hear the dogs barking and fighting, which is a loud, startling noise disturbance. Furthermore, what one owner may see as playful, another may see as instigating. Each dog and the owner is blamed by the opposite owner. Anyone who has a dog knows what I mean. Our perception is inherently biased in our own dog's favor. It's natural, but it often leads to screaming matches among the owners, making enemies out of neighbors, and with the whole neighborhood having to hear it. We all know that dog's urine causes burnt patches that kills the grass and turns it brown, and the sod itself is torn up as the dogs run and play. The beautiful lawn that draws us all to the park would quickly become a distant memory. Plus, the park would require yearly closures for new seed to take hold, closing for weeks or even months on end. And I'm sure you're aware of the added work for city employees and the cost to the city itself. I do support dog parks, but because I was an active member on the board of an off-leash dog park, I have a unique understanding of the pitfalls of a neighborhood dog park. The dog parks that are truly successful are the ones that are isolated from all homes, located in more industrial areas. I urge the city to limit off-leash use to the existing dog parks and to allow our neighborhood parks to remain safe and peaceful for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Heiko Peschel, followed by Philip Thompson.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Heiko Peschel for Perel Foothill Ranch, and I'm proud to say I've lived in this neighborhood since 1960, so I've been here longer than most, in and out and around, went to Huntington Beach High School. But first of all, thank you to Lieutenant Valentine for his comments tonight, very on the spot, very much up to date. I guess it was very easy to mistake that flagpole base for something other than the flagpole base because it was nice stainless steel and very shiny, and anybody could have done that one. I would like to thank the lieutenant and his staff for the improved coverage in our neighborhood. Since the new station has come in, we've seen more black and whites and more unmarked cars in our neighborhood. Even the LoJack folks come up and visit once in a while. Thank you to the folks I spent some time volunteering with, the Stars, because one of the things they do is they go around to every school every weekday that they're working. They also go around to every park. They check the restrooms in the park, make sure everything's okay, and they just generally have a look around. They are the eyes and ears that supplement our police department. On a side note, AR-15 is a much easier gun to play with than the M14 that I trained on back in the 60s. So I'm glad to see that our Sheriff's Department has weapons on that order, because they are good weapons and they work well. And I am mostly anti-gun, so take that. One other comment that these folks have is when you have initial parties to figure out what you're going to do with your different areas, and you get 10 or 12 people, you have to realize that there are a whole bunch of people out there who, for some reason, didn't take the time to go there until they found out that it affected them. So neighbor notification on the part of the Parks and Rec Department is a pretty good idea insofar as what's happening in the area. If you're going to do something in Foothill Ranch, please tell our Foothill Ranch Board, and we'll be glad to disseminate it to all our members because we have newsletters too, and we have letter and email capability. Anyway, thank you, and Scott, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Philip Thompson, followed by Andrea Alexander.
Welcome.
My name is Philip Thompson, and I live on Montberry Drive, just catty corner from the park, probably about 500 feet. I've lived in the city of Lake Forest for about 3.5 years now. I retired about 3 years ago, and one of the reasons we purchased the house that we did purchase was because of the park, okay, because of our neighbors that we do have. I feel very fortunate. Concern that I would have more than anything else is, why do we need another dog park? Do we realize that right now there are 40, I think there's 40 dog parks in Orange County. There are over 400 parks that you can take your dogs to. So why do we need another one? Did we do our homework on our present dog park, on the other one that we have over here on, I think it's Baffin Way, over by the rental place? Have we done our homework on that? Have we seen how that dog park is working out? Have we talked to the residents in that area? Things of that concern, I have a concern about. I also have a concern that Bernie brought up something regarding seeing surveyors out there. I mean, kind of caught off guard on it. Is that a lie? Is it not true? There wasn't surveyors out there? When someone's saying something like that at a meeting like this and nobody on the board here is disputing it, I'm wondering what's going on. I think, we should be notified ahead of time. And more than anything else, it's not going to affect any of you folks. Okay? It's going to affect us. And usually that's how we are, really. If it doesn't affect us, we don't care most of the time. But I really appreciate if you look into it and do your homework before you decide that's going to be the place, if it's going to be the place.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Is it true? That the surveyors were out there?
There were no surveyors out there looking at building a dog park, but were there surveyors for some other reason? I'll ask the city manager.
I can't speak to that. I'm not aware of any surveyors out there.
No, and it's. I think it's important. It's important for you to understand. At a meeting 2 weeks ago, someone came here. I'm not taking your time. You'll get your time later. A woman came up and she complained that she'd been in contact with the city and nobody from the city was calling her back, and she was all upset. And I was upset. Nobody from the city is calling her back, so I followed up, and it turns out, well, she's suing the city. And the reason nobody's calling her back is because it's in the hands of the lawyer, and nobody can call her back because she decided to sue the city. The point I'm making there, and someone else came the other week and said the crime was up in his neighborhood and what could we do about it, and I had the police chief look into it. In fact, the crime is down in his neighborhood. So the fact that someone comes up here and says something, I don't want you to think that that's necessarily the truth. It's someone saying something. It may be true, it may not be true, but you can't take that to the bank. So with that being said, and I'm sorry to have interrupted, go ahead.
Thank you. Those flyers are for all of you. Hello, I'm Andrea Alexander. I've lived in Lake Forest for 30 years now. And I just want to remind everyone that in about 90 days, on June 5th, we're going to have a very important election. And while everyone is focused on the congressional candidates, I really think we need to be paying attention to the great local candidates that we have running. One of them is running for Orange County Board of Education. Her name is Mary Navarro. She's a highly qualified candidate with more than 30 years of experience, and she has a master's in education and a master's in business. And I want to encourage everyone to go to her website, votemarynavarro.com, and look at all her qualifications. In that regard, I am hosting a candidate forum, and I invite all of you and all of you to come and meet Mary and some of the other wonderful candidates that are running for local office. Join me at the Sun and Sail Club on March 22nd at 6:30 p.m. The event is free. I will have flyers in the back of the room. I do ask that if there are any flyers left that you please call me or email me so I can come pick them up. These are very expensive to make. I'm finding that out. Running a campaign is not cheap. Anyway, that being said, I will have representatives from the Orange County Sheriffs, the Orange County Board of Education, and the Orange County District Attorney. I received a phone call from Todd Spitzer on Saturday, and he's going to try to change his schedule so that he can be there. I currently have Brett Murdoch and suddenly I forgot the other guy's name for District Attorney, Mary Navarro for Board of Education, along with a fellow named Mike Delotti. And for the sheriff, I have Duke Nguyen. I have emailed Mr. Barnes and Mr. Harrington, and they have not responded. And I can't remember the other district attorney's name. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for getting involved in civic activities like that. That's great.
And I met Mary Navarro. She came to my office hours one day. That is one sharp woman. So I completely endorse her. She knows what she's talking about. And I will try my best to be there also.
No further requests.
Okay, do we have anything from Facebook?
Mayor, we have about 6 requests. The first 4 concern the lieutenant's presentation earlier, and then there are some general comments.
Okay, well, since in for a penny, in for a pound, let's hear them.
Okay. Axel Maldani, comment to council. What can you do so that the citizens of Lake Forest can choose a cable or TV company that is not a monopoly like Cox? Currently, I have no choice but to hire Cox instead of having other options, as there should be in an open market of fair competition.
That's a great question. Sorry, you don't mind me chiming in?
No, go ahead.
I have been having the worst luck with Cox Cable as of late. We bought the 100 gig or whatever it is service, and we get like 4 gigs, and we see the dial go down on the screen, down to like 0.4, even though we're paying for so much. This is actually something I was going to mention at the end of the night. I would like to talk about this with the council. I don't know if there's anything that we can do to try to work out agreements, attracting other businesses, or if there's something, maybe we can have conversations with Cox about improving their services, because I know I'm not the only one. I've heard from several people on Facebook that have been having the problem. So anyway, I'll bring that up at the end of the night for council discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Maldani.
Oh, excuse me, Councilman Roberts.
Could you address that really quick, though? So we have a franchise agreement.
Sure, there is a statewide franchise agreement, and Cox falls under that, so they're able to be in our community. However, there's no barrier franchise-wise to any other company wanting to come into our community. It's really a cost barrier for somebody to install the infrastructure needed to compete with Cox. But from a regulatory standpoint, from where the city is, it's completely free. Someone else could come in and offer that service.
Okay, next.
Eric Fazikis, comment to the City Council. Please be aware that there were 2 lockdowns at El Toro High School, one on Friday and one just yesterday. There's nobody talking about it yesterday. There's no one talking about it. Yesterday was a bomb square, and on Friday was a possible shooter. It was a horrible experience for children, and it all started because of something on Snapchat, and apparently they caught the guy. However, there's a planned walkout on the 14th, and there were some rumors going around about a shooter if anybody walked out during the walkout, which is supposed to protest gun violence. All of these have to be taken very seriously, and therefore please post articles about what happened on those 2 days, as the Sheriff's Department doesn't post very much, and there's only one article on the Lake Forest patch, and that is unacceptable. What is going to be done about this?
Okay, well, I think Lieutenant Valentine addressed that. So, next question.
Jennifer Fazakis, on Friday and yesterday, El Toro High School experienced a full-blown lockdown. On Friday, it was because someone thought there was a shooter, and there was a verbal threat of an attack on the high school campus on Monday going around. Yesterday, there was a strange object on the campus, and there was another lockdown. What's disturbing is there haven't been any posts or conversations on social media or anywhere in the internet except for one small article on Patch. I would appreciate some more awareness on this. What do you think should be the next step to protect our kids, knowing that there have been 2 lockdowns in the last 3 days? There's also a planned walkout on the 14th that was started by someone on Snapchat, which apparently this person was caught. However, this person actually threatened to shoot anybody who walked out to protest gun violence. So there will be a heightened police presence on that fixed that day on campus. I thought you should know. Please get the word out. We need to make this our first priority.
Yeah, and again, I think it's been answered. On the other hand, Lieutenant Valentine, you know the introductory, the 10-minute presentation that you did here, do you have any objections to us cutting that out and putting that presentation on the web so that people just beyond the people here and the people on Facebook could see that?
No, there's nothing there that would be critical to a response or anything like that.
Okay, great. And Brett, your crack team can edit that out and make it a separate presentation just to get it up there. I think people would find that comforting and educational to see everything you're doing. Okay, thanks. And thanks for those comments.
Janet Brennan, comment to council. I heard that Mayor Gardner has not respected law enforcement in the past when he called the sheriff or deputy, quote, a liar twice at a recent council meeting. Is this true?
I don't believe, have I called you a liar? Well, I don't think so. In any event, it might interest you to know that I've actually worked for the police in several occasions. When I lived in Ohio, when I lived in Australia, I used to train the police. I was a special assistant to the Commissioner of Police in Queensland, and I worked with the DEA when I lived in Columbus, Ohio. So in fact, and I'm also a published author on many occasions about police procedures, and I also studied profiling at workshops for psychologists put on by the BAU. So and we work very closely together. My granddaughter prepared and my wife prepare supplies that the police use. I'm working with the first responders, grab and go, to provide snacks for the police. So yeah, I could go on. I think I've spent enough time on that. Go ahead, next question.
The next is Jesse Tellez, comment to City Council. How can we as citizens help the homeless locally?
Would you like to take a shot at that, Lieutenant?
Mayor and members of the council and the public, there are many ways to help the homeless, and my suggestion would be to get involved in a nonprofit or a faith-based organization that already exists. The one things we want to be careful of is not to set up a brick-and-mortar shop here in the city that becomes a destination point to bring more homeless into the city. So the best way to get involved is through an existing faith-based organization or a nonprofit that already exists.
Yeah, excellent idea. I know Soroptimus International gets together, and that's a nonprofit here in the city of Lake Forest, and they do things for the homeless. I'm sure other groups do.
And we just, the city manager and I just did a tour of Families Forward, and a lot of their clients serve Lake Forest community. That is a fantastic program. They're right on the border of Irvine and Lake Forest, so they're very accessible for residents. So Families Forward would be a good one to consider also.
Okay, do we have another one?
Our final comment during public comments, Stephen Smith, comment for council. Mayor Gardner, you are the author of chaos. All of the articles you have written that disparage previous councils, previous colleagues, current colleagues, people who run for office, planning commissions, etc. Why are you so nasty? You wasted taxpayers' money with unnecessary recalls. You spent $30,000 just for a few months of majority. Sure, seems your tune has changed now that you are mayor, leaving the carnage that you heaped upon Mark Teddimer, Andrew Hamilton, Dwight Robinson, Scott Voights, David Bass, and many others. Let notice be given that the residents of Lake Forest are sick and tired of you and your antics, and we are following your every move.
Thank you for your comments. And as I said before, we believe in the First Amendment. We believe everybody has the right to express their opinion. What we also believe is that as the city council members here, we need to respect you and not reply in kind, and we need to respond to you and make this a safe environment in which you feel free to come forward and criticize any of us. So thank you very much. With that, I'll end the public comment session, and we're right at our 8 o'clock break time anyway.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to address a couple things in public comment. Would that be all right? Okay, and I'll be brief because I know we've taken a lot of time here. First of all, with respect to the Montbury Park, I just want to get more clarification there, and if you can't provide it tonight, that's fine, but have we had people out there that were trying to do something with respect to figuring out what we're going to do with the park? I understand in that plan it's like 2 years from now is when we'd actually do something, right? But are we aware of any staff that's been out there looking at this for that purpose, the actual
Right.
redesign?
Based on Tom and I looking at each other, neither of us are aware of anything, but we can certainly ask our designers to see if they've been out to do anything at that park, and we can certainly get back to you. And some of the residents, as long as we have their contact information, we can get that information out to them as well.
Great, I'd appreciate that. And then, Mr. City Attorney, there was a comment that was made by one individual with respect to the HOA there selling the park land. I would guess that would be to the county, and made some claims about what was decided in that sale. So I would appreciate it if you could look probably in county documents and find out if there are any prohibitions about what we could potentially do with that parkland. So thank you very much for that. And then there was one question about, and I was at that same real estate meeting with the mayor. There was a question about where the money came from, and I think our response was a little vague. It come from fund balance, and I think they're trying to figure out where did the funds come from. So my understanding is the vast majority of it is Liftum funds, but some of it is general fund dollars. Is that fair characterization?
I didn't go into a lot of detail, but we are getting some new funds, the SB1 funds that was approved for the state of California on the gas tax. That's about $1.5 million a year of new funds. Those funds are going into street resurfacing entirely. There's also a few other funds. There's Liftum funds. There's FCPP funds. If they would like, I could walk them through the staff report and show them exactly where they're coming from and where they're going.
And there was a great PowerPoint that I would assume is somewhere online, so if the individual wants to find it, maybe she could point them to that direction. But a variety of different sources, and so but yeah. Let's see. And I think that covers, I'm sure there's something that I'm missing, but I think that covers it, so thank you.
Anybody else?
Besides Montbury Park being a plaza park, El Toro High School, Tribuco Hill Skies, and Serrano Junior High I guess there's a bridge somewhere out there. I haven't been to that park, but there's a bridge that actually goes through the park that is a great photo op for high school and junior high teams and students. So it's prom night That's a busy place for Tribuco Hills High School and El Toro High School, with all the kids coming for prom night scheme photos. A lot of the teams, whether it be soccer or volleyball, go out there after the end of the season and get their pictures taken out there. So it is a beautiful park, and rest assured that all those community members came forward tonight. There will be more hearings out there, so it's not a done deal. So please stay engaged, stay involved, and thank you all for coming, and thank you for the kind words, guys.
Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break and be back at 8:10.
I didn't want to chime in again. I remember what my other question was. I was wondering how what our process is for someone that wants to use this class kind of cards. Because, like, I know my wife's taking them at Pittsburgh Park, which I think was actually in our guys. Yeah.
It's off anyway.
Now it's on.
Council, let's resume. Yeah, we have a quorum. The heck with them. Okay, consent calendar. All matters listed under the warrant registered are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items be removed from the warrant register for separate action. Have there been any requests to pull an item from the warrant register?
No, Your Honor.
Council? Then I'll entertain...
Move.
Move. Second. Vote, please. And consent calendar.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Someone has to push the absent button on Councilmember Voigt's. There you go. That motion carries with Councilmember Voigt absent from the dais.
Okay. How can you push an absent button? That doesn't sound right. Ghosts in the City Hall. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted. Didn't I just say this? By one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. On item 15, the recommended action has been revised to delete recommendations 2 and 3. I think that's from the last one.
I
isn't it?
apologize, it is.
Yeah, okay. So let's delete the deletion and move right to have there been any requests to remove an item from the consent calendar.
No, Your Honor.
And council members, do you want to remove anything from the consent calendar? I want to remove item 5. Is there anything else to remove? Then I'll move the remainder.
Second.
Please vote.
That motion carries with Councilmember Voigt absent from the dais.
Okay. On item number 5, there are, under the recommendations for the dog park, there were 6 recommendations. I think only one of them made it into the minutes, so I'll move that the other 5 be resuscitated and put back.
Mayor, can I suggest an alternative, that you ask us to bring these back corrected to your next meeting so everyone can see it?
That's what I meant.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What she said. Do I have a second?
Second.
Please vote. Okay.
That motion carries with Councilmember Voigt absent from the dais.
Okay. Discussion action items. Item number 9, local preference for intern hiring. City Manager?
Mayor and members of the council, this was an item brought forward by Councilmember Voigt. He has since asked me to table this item until the budget hearing in May, because it's essentially initiatives for next year. And so his preference is that we hold it and bring it back in May when you consider all your other budget items.
Okay. Do you want a motion to that effect?
Yes, please.
Okay. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I'd just like to discuss just very briefly. I know you're going to bring it back, but in looking through this, there's some things that we can do, some things that we can't. I think one thing that we can do is just better promote what opportunities there are to Lake Forest residents. I'm sure there's nothing that precludes us from doing that, and so the more we can make that aware through social media, print media, things like that don't require any additional expense from a budgetary perspective, I'd love to see us do that. And just make these opportunities more aware to both high school, college, and professionals that might be interested in internships. So, but happy to have the discussion later on.
Okay. Did we vote on that, or did we delay it while he was talking?
I have a motion and a second, but no vote.
So let's vote.
That motion carries with Councilmember Voigt absent from the dais.
Okay, item number 10, mid-year budget review, submitted by Assistant Manager Keith Neves. Can you give us the report?
Yes. Mayors and members of the City Council, each year, 6 months into the year, we get final numbers for where we're at going 6 months into the fiscal year, and tonight I will review where we're at and review going forward. So here we are at the mid-year budget review. Tonight, in the mid-year budget review, we'll review the fiscal year 17-18 operating budget, and then we will also review around 5 projects on the capital improvement projects budget for 17-19. That's the 2-year CIP budget. A few topics of discussion. First, we'll overview. We'll have an economic outlook, and then we'll go into changes in the general fund revenues, general fund expenditures, and then we'll look at other funds revenues and other funds expenditures. So the economic outlook right now in the general fund budget, as you saw last week at the strategic plan, with all the adjustments, it's about $4 million deficit. I mean, not $4 million, $400,000 in the deficit before transfers. That is because before transfers, there's a $2.1 million surplus. The one-time pension payment of $2.5 million, that's what turns it upside down into a deficit, a $400,000 deficit. But that was really one-time money. You back that one-time money out, and it's really going into mid-year. It's a $2.1 million surplus. At the beginning of the year, we went in with about a $589,000 surplus. So we have increased the surplus up to about $2.1 million at the mid-year mark. General fund revenues, we'll get into some detail, are up around $3.1 million. Our reserves are fully funded, and the city is in solid financial condition. So let's go through the revenues that are coming in as we see it mid-year and making adjustments to them. Total taxes, that's a few taxes all combined, are up almost $1.5 million. That consists of property taxes up around $300,000. That is our secured tax base in the city. We're going to make an adjustment of about $300,000. The vehicle license fee tax is up around $175,000. Our sales tax, use tax, is up.
Could you tell people what TOT? I think most people don't know.
Yeah, I'll get down to that when I'll tell you.
Okay.
Our sales tax is up roughly $500,000, almost 3.6%. But a good portion of that is use tax, one-time tax on equipment coming into the city. So our commercial area is bringing in equipment, which we get the one-time sales tax on. So most of that is one-time sales tax coming into the city, not ongoing sales tax going out into the future. TOT, which is transient occupancy tax, that's the hotel tax. We're up about $175,000. We've seen that grow probably for the last 5 years straight, and the hotels are doing, our 10 hotels are doing very well in the city. When we get to the expenditure side, you'll see permits for new hotels coming in, so that's the hotel tax in the city. And the real property transfer tax, that's up around $300,000. That's really one-time money. There is a consistent base of real property transfer tax for sales in the city, for other things, but this big increase or big adjustment this time is really the adjustments for big land being sold, from Lancey Homes to KB Homes. They're selling tracts off, so that's why we're seeing a big real jump in the real property transfer tax. And then, of course, the franchise fees are a little bit down. Gas, electric, and trash. As you can see, gas is down $10,000, electric's $50,000, and then, of course, trash is down $15,000. But your biggest revenue sources are your secured property tax, which is up. Your property tax with your vehicle license fee is up. Your TOT, transient occupancy tax, is up, and your sales tax is up. So your 4 biggest revenue sources of the city are all doing well. Also, general fund revenues, user fees are up. And what I mean by user fees, a lot of these are the one-time building permit fees that are happening with the development in the city. So building permit fees are up almost $755,000. Within that is the projection is the 3 hotels will pull building permits before June 30th. So that's why that number was increased to that dollar amount. Plan check and engineering fees. The engineering fees are really grading fees that are happening. That is up in Portola Hills, Land C, and then we also have in that projection Serrano Summit. Lennar's coming in, and they will start grading by the end of the month over there on Serrano Summit by the Civic Center site. Other revenues are up $400,000. That's reimbursements. That's a one-time payment from the self-help in the developer agreement, the developer agreement with IRWD, which is now owned by Lennar Homes. As we all know, we initiated the self-help provision in that agreement, and that means we did all the grading and we are doing the street construction and wet and dry utilities. We get a 10% administrative fee for doing that from the owner. So as we bill the owner for the reimbursements, we are also billing our 10% administrative fee. It's a one-time fee. It's more than this. It's going to be about $850,000 total. But that will be a one-time money going into the general fund balance. On the general fund expenditure side, you saw that personnel is up $153,300. That was the council-approved pay-for-performance increase back in August. The council approved more money than that, but with salary savings, cash outs, it all balances out. We're only adding about $153,000 to the budget. On operations and maintenance is up roughly $1.5 million. That is new development. That is the expenditure side on the development. The $960,000 is an increase in both Public Works Department and Development Services Department for those contracts for those development fees. And then the city clerk is going up roughly $405,000. That is $332,000 for the special election that the city of Lake Forest held for the recall. The total cost on that is around $330,000. And then there was a $30,000 invoice for the districts for the law firm, Shakeman Law Firm. And then the remaining was just an adjustment for some help with our city clerk that not retired, but left us to go to Murrieta a couple months ago, so we had some extra help in the department.
Just quick question. The city clerk expense, was that both the recalls or just the most recent one?
Just the most recent one.
I didn't get that number again.
The most recent recall election, the bill just came from the county. It was $271,000 to hold that election, and then there was about $60,000 for the counting of the recall. That's where that number comes from.
And so that's all paid done now?
You will see the $271,000. The other invoice was paid a couple meetings ago, and you will see the $271,000 invoice on your next warrant on the next agenda.
Thank you.
So, the general fund budget, the beginning balance, the adjusted beginning balance, $25.2 million. Revenues coming in are looking to be about $50 million. Expenditures, $50.4 million. That's the $400,000 that we're using from fund balance to get by. And then, of course, but we are using some one-time money with the payment of the pension. So, and then revenues less expenditures is $400,000. Transfers out $1.2. That's going to your reserves for the policy. And of course, the ending fund balance to 23.6 is a number we went off last Tuesday at the strategic plan workshop, and that's the money we spent down. So this is the new adjusted balance, and last week we had those numbers in there for the new adjusted balance. Just show you this again. We showed you last week at the 5-year strategic plan, the 5-year projection. I show you this because we're doing, you see mid-year, and that's, I don't have my glasses, so I can't see that as well as I'd like to see it. But you see mid-year where we go upside down a little bit, but that's because of the one-time payment really coming out of fund balance. Otherwise, you're really $2.1 million surplus. And then going into 18-19, just an early projection. We have not put all these budgets together. The departments have handed them in to the city manager, but we're still going through the review process. But it looks, you've got about $1 million surplus going into next year. But going out, you start seeing those lines start to cross in the 4th and 5th year. And that's because of expenditures rising a little bit faster than our revenue. And those like I told you last week, there's a couple big driving factors, the sheriff's contract being one of them. So your reserve fund balance, you're transferring $1.2 million into it per the reserve policy. As revenue goes up, you per the policy, we transfer 40% into reserve. So as you see, starting out with $21.8 million, increasing it by $1.2 million, you've got $23 million in reserves in the city. That is outside of that 23.5 number that you saw and spent last week. I just want to show you in your OPEB trust, an outside trust that the city set up a few years ago. You have about $508,000 in that trust, and then your pension stabilization trust, you've got about $1.2 million in that. And Dr. Gardner, Mayor Gardner, asked last week, concerns about, when are we going to just pay another payment to the pensions? And I went through that they did earn 11.2% in 16-17. They're in positive this year again. So that'll take us a couple of years out, but you still have that pension stabilization trust set up with almost $1.2 million in it too, if there seems to be another payment need to be made down into the future.
Do we continue to add to this payment stabilization trust, or is it just
interest earnings are adding to it? It's a trust outside of our regular investments with PARs. So that trust the last few years have earned 5 to 7%, earning a little bit more this year. But because it's an outside trust outside the city, we can invest it differently. Now, other fund revenues. A lot of numbers on this screen. Should have split it up probably. Really, all the other fund revenue adjustments are impact fees from the OSA development. That's all these are. Your city facilities maintenance fee, city's capital projects, city capital projects, FCPP fees, all these fees are coming in from the OSA development. The one big one that it needs to be adjusted downwards is the OSA impact fee. Those are the fees that are paid for the sports park and will pay for the civic center. Now that's just being adjusted down for projections for 17-18 because Land C has upped their production and they're moving faster than what we originally thought, and they're loaded with a lot of credits up front, so they won't be paying a fee until they use their credits. Once their credits are out, then they'll be paying a fee.
You said sports park, didn't you mean Portola Park?
No, no, those aren't sports park. I meant sports park. So all these OSA impact fees paid for our sports park, and they will pay for our civic center. Portola Park, yes, they're being paid for by not all developer fees, but they have given us almost $2.8 million in developer fees. The developer up there, Baldwin Brothers, for Portola Park. Just some other fund expenditures. Senior mobility just needs to be adjusted about $10,000. We're a lot more use in the program this year than expected in prior years. Capital fund expenditures. These are 6 projects that need adjusted. We will be bringing you back a midterm capital projects in the summer. We're not quite halfway through the first year of the 2-year CIP. So we'll be bringing, these are small adjustments to some projects that are currently going on. Street resurfacing, Teach Street storm drain, that adjustment is the some underground utilities that were not on the engineering plans. A couple of the other ones are very small, and then the other big one down below, neighborhood park study. If you remember, there was only around $300,000 in the original budget, and in that staff report, council directed us. Council picked RJM as the designer, and that price was around $518,000. So we're just adjusting the budget up now. That comes out of park development fees. So all funds budget adjusted in the city. Beginning balances adjust up to $227 million for beginning balances. Revenues about $78 million, and expenditures of about $119 million. In that is the Civic Center starting. We opened the bids on Friday. We are currently going through them, looking at the estimates, and then we'll bring that back to the City Council either next meeting or the following meeting with a report and the contracts. And then, of course, revenues less expenditures. We're spending more than we're bringing in, but of course these are one-time capital funds that you will always spend more than you bring in when you start doing your big projects. Any balance in the city at the end of 6/30/2018 looks to be about $85.5 million. So wrapping this up, we have a balanced budget. Reserves are fully funded. City is in good financial condition. Just a note that we need to keep an eye on ongoing expenditures. You see in our graph that I showed you earlier that we do kind of start turning upside down fourth and fifth year. The fifth year is only about $10,000 upside down, but expenditures are growing at a faster pace than revenues. Like I said, the sheriff's contract is a big contributor to that. That's a $17 million contract. By the fifth year, it's almost a $20.5 million contract. And then inflation. Inflation around, as we're seeing on our Civic Center bid openings, there's inflation out there, and inflation will start hitting other parts of the budget. So we just got to be careful of what we're adding into the future on expenditures that have ongoing expenditures attached to them. With that, I will turn it back over to the City Council for any questions.
Do we have any public questions?
No, Your Honor.
Council? Mayor Pro Tem?
Just thinking about that pension stabilization fund, considering there will come a day when we will have to fund unfunded pensions again. This trust, can we add to this on a regular basis so that we can be prepared, so when it does happen again, we will have the money and we won't end up being upside down on our budget? It'll already be allocated?
Yes, the City Council can make a decision to add money at any time to that trust.
Can it be something that can be done on a quarterly or a yearly basis?
What we can do is we can bring that as a discussion back at the budget workshop.
I'd like that. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want consensus on that? No?
No, we'll bring it.
Any other questions? Just occurred to me, and mostly for the sake of the people watching and here tonight, and thank you, those of you who are here, thank you for being here. And thank you for those of you watching online. The OSA and all the money that the OSA brings in, what would you say? We're about halfway through that in terms of the building and the fees and et cetera?
We're probably about 65% away.
65%.
We roughly probably 1,700 homes left.
Okay.
Maybe a little less than that.
Okay, thank you. Then what will we do? Do we just accept the report?
Make a motion. There's a resolution attached to it, so we'll need a...
There's 4 actions, and so you could simply move the recommended actions in the staff report.
So move staff recommended action. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay. Please vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
And thank you for a good report and for doing such a good job and keeping us financially healthy. Next to public safety, the finance of the city would probably the number 2 thing we need to worry about. Item 11, Business Development Subcommittee Report from members of the City Council. And let me say, Councilman Robinson and I worked on that for about 8 months, I guess, with the Chamber of Commerce. So this was a joint effort. Mary Visconti, Jeremy Olson, and several other people worked on this. So this is a team effort to come before you with a report. Do we have any questions or comments?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. I'm assuming that everybody's read the report. Is there any need for me to go through it?
No, but I just had comments on it. As I was reading the report, there were a lot of things that I had agreed that we should be doing, and like, why hadn't we done this? Oh, this is great. This is what I thought too. I thought this too. So it's nice that we all seem to be on the same page with where we feel that our business partnership should go within the city. So I really think you guys did a great collaboration with the chamber. So I have no other comments except thank you for all your work.
I would like to echo that. I think that, working hand in hand with our local chamber, which is all volunteer, I got to say the ideas that were there I'm in agreement with, and so good job on you guys. Thank you.
Okay, there was one item that didn't make it. Most of those items that are here were exactly as the Mayor Pro Tem said. We didn't invent the wheel. These were things going around. We just said, it's time we started doing it. But there is one brilliant new idea that didn't make it on the sheet. And I will give that to Councilman Robinson to add that, because that impacts business development as well.
Are you referring to what we just spoke about last week, what we just met about?
Yeah.
Okay. So Mayor Gardner and I got together last week to talk about an issue that I've been mulling over for a while. And it's, as we're meeting regionally, we're seeing that we've got a lot of challenges in the county. And some of our challenges relate to housing, some relate to jobs. And I know that housing is a tricky issue to deal with. There are negative parts that come with additional housing, and that's one of the things that was questioned even tonight. Where are we spending these $12 million? Where is it coming from? Things of that nature. So how do you find a way to make sure that the young people in our community can continue to live here? That the jobs that are here are attracting the right individuals, and how do you provide that workforce housing that's so desperately needed? Many of our homes, some of the folks in Montbury there mentioned home values of $900 to $1.2 million. There aren't very many marketing managers making $70,000 a year at Oakley that can afford a $900,000 house, right? And so, the idea that I started mulling over and then mentioned to Councilman Gardner was the potential for a business, or maybe even multiple businesses in town at some point, but to start with a business that we could reach out to in some way who might want to provide some on-site housing for a small percentage of their employees. So use Oakley as an example. Oakley might have some of those younger individuals that are looking for a very small apartment. So small square footage, very reasonably priced, so that they're not having to drive in from Corona or out in the Inland Empire where maybe they can afford some housing. And so what this does is it brings some new housing for those specific employees, but they're working where they live. So it's not to say that there'd be zero traffic impact, but the traffic impact would be significantly reduced because they're not commuting back and forth to work every day. Another positive is the fact that the sales tax dollars are primarily staying in town because they both live and work here. So they're not spending half their day in Irvine working at a job where they're spending money during the day at their dry cleaner, at restaurants, and things like that. So that's just kind of the initial thought. There were a few that kind of branched off from that, but that was part of the conversation. I don't know if you want to elaborate any. I don't know if I'm doing it justice, but that was just kind of the initial idea. And like I said, I've been mulling it over for a while. How do you tackle a lot of very big issues that we have here in town? And it finally coalesced to the point where at the South Orange County Economic Coalition meeting that Mayor Gardner and Councilman, I think all of us were there except maybe Mayor Pro Tem Basil might not have been able to make it to that one, but this was a big conversation just generally about the need for housing, the need for jobs in South Orange County. And so afterward I had a brief conversation with Carlo, followed it up with a meeting with the mayor, and so here we are. So it's both the mayor and I have talked to some of the staff about potentially researching the possibility for this idea. I think that it could be a way to even potentially attract businesses into town. It could be something that sets us apart. And in my conversations over the last couple of weeks with some of the larger cities in Orange County, none of them are doing anything like this at this point. So it could be something it's not a brand new idea for sure, but it could be innovative for the county. So, and in fact, as I was reading through our housing element today, I noticed that we have classification for agricultural worker housing or something along that line. So you could work on a farm and provide housing for your farm hands. So you could operate a high-tech business and provide some housing for, again, it's going to be a small percentage of the employee base for sure, no question about it, if we were to even move forward with something like this. But could be a very interesting way of tackling a very large issue that our entire county is facing right now. So,
Okay, thank you. Excellent summary. And I just wanted to get that out, and I know we're just mulling it over. At this point, I'm going to move that we accept the report and its recommendations and hand it to our head of economic development, Carlo Tamaino, knowing that he's new to the position, knowing that Adrian has been, doing a fantastic job, having lost 2 people in the last few months and keeping everything going. So we realize and don't expect any of these things tomorrow or in the next week. So we understand this is a lot, and we don't expect rapid implementation of any of it, but just for you to take it and work with the city manager and prioritize it and see how you can get it in the next year.
Question. On number 5, it says, consider business license as means to increase interaction with businesses. So I'm taking that to mean you'd like us to research what it would take to implement a business license and give potential options for how it could look.
I'd rather we called it registration than license.
Okay, but it's a research project. Is that what I'm understanding there?
Yes, what are other cities doing?
Okay.
And particularly in regard to fees, like what does it cost us to do that? Because we're certainly not interested in, $200 fee or making a profit on businesses, but in terms of cost recovery. And with regard to that, the Chamber has agreed that they would give like 6 months free membership as kind of an offset, whatever it came to. Go ahead.
That kind of summarizes what we were talking about here. We were looking at the issue of the fact that right now we have a business registration process that's entirely voluntary, and it's very difficult for us to keep track of what businesses are in town, finding ways of supporting them. One thing that we heard, I think, in the most recent satisfaction survey was that some businesses felt like we weren't communicating with them enough. If we don't know who they are, then it's kind of hard to communicate with them. I think we do a great job of communicating with all of those that we're aware of, and the economic development team does a great job of trying to track them all down. But so that was one of the reasons that we were talking about this, was how could we identify who the businesses are? And as he so aptly put it, we're not looking to generate revenue from this. I don't think that it would generate enough for it to really make sense anyway. But what we're hoping to do is have a fee in place so that there would be a way of identifying the business, and then also they receive some sort of benefit from that. So that's where the kind of brief conversation we've had with the Chamber, and they seem supportive of some idea there of providing some sort of membership, getting them tied into the business community in some way, so that hopefully both their interaction with the city and with the Chamber, it helps elevate their business and make sure that it has a much higher likelihood of surviving. So that's kind of the general thought there, and we were looking at something, at least I think some of our initial discussion was the potential for just a one-time fee, how you'd find out whether they were no longer in business when you just have a one-time fee. I understand there's some challenges with that, but at least you know that they exist. Then you have to find out when they don't exist. And an annual fee would do that because they just stop paying the bill. But if it's a one-time, how would you find that out? So I know there's going to be some challenges in there, but that's kind of what we were looking at this point. And we've never, at least to my knowledge, never had a fee in place of any kind. It's always been voluntary. So there could be some negative sentiments with respect to doing this, but I think that the benefits could potentially far outweigh the negatives there, and so it's definitely worth exploring in my mind.
I agree with you. I don't see licensing or registration of businesses being something we're trying to be onerous on a business owner. I don't want to poison them and make them do things and jump through hoops. That's not the intent. The intent is to find out who's here and who's not here, what market they have, and see to make sure that our city is diversified enough so that there is a future recession. We're diverse enough, and we can prepare in advance that we're not going to just be only have oil derricks or only have Disneyland, and if something crumbles, we lose everything. So it's a method of us preserving the city's prosperity and making sure that we're financially sound. So we have to do it in a way that it's not trying to close the door on businesses, but it's actually trying to help. And I've heard from residents, from other, Mission Viejo, someone had complained in the past, it's so difficult getting a license there, you've got to do all these special things. In my opinion, that's not something I would want to do. It's a method for us to keep track of who's here and to make sure that our city continues to thrive.
Yeah, any other clarifications on the items? Okay. Then what should I, file the report, or?
I think you could vote to transmit the report to the staff.
Okay.
So
I'll move that we transmit the report to the staff. Okay, vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item number 12, review of city council policies submitted by the city manager. City manager?
Okay, Mayor and members of the council. So this is an item I put on the agenda because we have a new member of the council, hence we have a new city council. So I thought it would be a good tradition to start that when we seat a new city council, we review our policies, and specifically those policies that we reference more frequently. So some of these are on here just to remind the council that they exist and have everybody take a look to make sure these are still the rules that you want to live by. So we've suggested these policies, and as staff, we're suggesting clarifications to 2 of the policies and the creation of a new policy regarding the new mayor's minute that we've started. So our first recommendation is to your travel policy, and it's to clarify that meetings or functions of public service or nonprofit partners qualify as eligible reimbursements. And so really that language was created to make it very clear that the Best and Bravest event and the Medal of Valor event are reimbursable items. They're qualified city expenses. The second is to your consensus policy. We're clarifying that the language that was already there, making it clear that it takes 2 council members to get something on the agenda. The second thing that I'd like to clarify is whether the 4 items per year refers to a calendar year or a fiscal year. So we're suggesting fiscal year, but again, that's up to the council. We would just like you to identify which one it is for clarity. Beyond that, we have nothing further.
All right, well, I'm going to suggest that we go through this one by one, just go down the list and approve it. Item number 1, expense reimbursement, travel. All those in favor?
Just real quick, you mentioned that it's for events that are nonprofit organizations. What's the expense? I mean, are
it would be like tickets to a banquet is normally what it is. Like, for example, we buy tickets to the TIP banquet, but the TIP banquet technically is not specifically called out in your policy, but it would follow under this language. So that's what we're trying to get to.
Okay, so it's not anything that anyone's paying for out of pocket right now that they're needing reimbursement for. It's just clarifying?
Yes, it's clarifying.
All right. Okay.
It's to kind of match our practice, basically.
All right.
Okay. Well, so I'll move item 1. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, let's vote.
Oh,
Nope. Okay.
I'm so sorry. I thought we were going to go through these one by one, not the entire table. I did have something for
No, I was going, item 1.
Oh, okay.
Not the table.
Okay.
Expense reimbursement and travel policy.
Okay, thank you.
Calling that item 1, the next one will be 2, the next one will be 3.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Well, there's nothing on 2 and 3, so there's nothing to do there. On number 4, do you want me to add that, or you still haven't? I have a question for the city manager. Pardon me for doing
I think this would be a good time for you to raise this with your colleagues.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. I wanted to, in recognition policy, I wanted to add a new award. I'm calling it the Mayor's Award, and I'm giving it the council would be giving it for recognition of outstanding achievement by a staff member. So this would be, unlike the certificates of appreciation and all the other stuff we do for people in general, this would be an award if somebody on the staff did something outstanding, which somebody does. It's not designed to be the Employee of the Month award. We don't have to give it. We never have to give it. On the other hand, we might give it more often, but it would be for outstanding achievement, and it would be anybody could nominate, the staff could nominate it, somebody who got outstanding service from the residents could nominate it, or we could nominate it, and then the council would decide, and then we would make the award.
So would this be just an award document, or would it be what exactly were you envisioning for the award?
Just like a certificate of appreciation, as we do with that, but a different kind of award than that. I hadn't, a credit card or a night out on the town, I hadn't thought of it in terms of anything monetary or a bouquet of flowers, just a nice certificate like we do, only in those other cases we're recognizing this person out there did that, this person. Now we'd be saying internally somebody on the staff just did something really wow, let's recognize that.
I like that idea, and in fact, they say, our staff is unsung heroes because all that goes on, and we are a vibrant, busy city, and my hat's off to our staff for the hard work they do. I like that idea.
Okay. Any other?
I think it's a great idea. I'm not sure how the mechanics would work. So, that's where I'd probably have some questions how this would actually work. I mean, if there's members of the public, then we could have. I think it would be really hard for anybody to vote no against someone who a member of the public wanted to recognize in some way. So we could have 0, or we could have dozens every meeting. You never know. I mean, so.
Right, and that's something Jim and I have been talking about, because in talking about this, my desire was that it be from the entire council, even though it's called the Mayor's Award. That's it's a good title. Somebody who gets that could certainly put that on their resume, and it would look really good, I think. But I would want the council, meaning 3 of you, really to be in support of this award. And so what I think I would suggest is you give us a chance to come up with some guidelines and bring that back to you. Because one of my ideas initially was maybe we have a council subcommittee, and then we as staff bring you suggestions or all of the letters we've received throughout the year that call out employees. Because one of the things, just in kind of talking through it, Jim, myself, and Carlo brought up was that, there's a lot of good staff work that gets done completely out of the eye of the council, where you may never know that it's happening, but it's really good work. And so my suggestion is to let us come up with some guidelines, and we'll bring this back to you. Probably not the next meeting, but the meeting after, for you to take a look at.
That sounds good to me, and I was thinking a subcommittee is probably what would make the most sense. So.
All right, then I'll move that with the understanding that the mechanism, the mechanics, will come forward.
Yes, we can define that there will be a Mayor's Award, and then the mechanics will come later.
Okay. And that's a motion from me. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, got 2 seconds. And vote, please.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, moving right along is the consensus policy, and we limited ourselves to 4 items per year. And we did that because when the Mayor Pro Tem came on board and we started firing on all cylinders.
It was my fault.
No, it wasn't your fault, but I can date it from then. And we started firing on all cylinders, and you had like 20 consent items in a week for people who are already busy anyway. And then sometimes those consent items take a lot of work, etc. So we limited ourselves to 4 items, and I'm a little worried that if that we're being too restrictive on ourselves. So I'm more looking for something that says it should be 4, and if you're going to do more than 4, you better have a damn good reason, and you better have 2 2 or 3 people who say, yes, you can have your 5th or your 6th. But I don't want to have a rigid, you used your 4, shut up, you can never, now you go 6 months and you can never have a consensus again.
Well, Your Honor, I'm not certain how does it fly, but if you have your 4 with just a 2, and if you want to go 5, 6, and 7, you've got to have 3 council members consent.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, something like that. Just to open it, with the understanding that we should try to keep it to 4, but I'd hate for something to come up in October. We'd all used all of our 4s, and then the rules said, and so we can't, how could we get it on board?
I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind is if we've all used all 4, we've put 20 items on the agenda for the year, which is a lot. So I think that's really where it comes from. If, like, as an example, I think this business subcommittee one I put on. You didn't want to use up your 4. I had no problem using one of mine, and so it kind of worked. Where it kind of worked where it could balance out that way.
I owed him a lunch because he did.
I don't have a problem with us doing more. I just want to make sure that we're being responsible with staff time and resources and budgets and things of that nature. And so that's really where it comes from more than anything else. Not to be restrictive. There are certain items where if we bring them forward, they probably count as 10 with what the request is, because it's so monumental, where others are very small and insignificant in the grand scheme of things. They're important to each one of us, but they're not nearly as significant as let's create something like the OSA, which is like it requires tons and tons of staff time, and so depending on the size of the issue, it could be significant. So I'm not really sure what's the best way of balancing this. Where are we at? Maybe that would be a good, if you have that information. Where are we at right now as far as, so if you're looking at it from a fiscal year perspective, have we all used them up? Do we have a bunch of extras still?
Some have gone past theirs,
okay,
and then others have a couple left. I'm not looking at anybody purposely, but we're probably at 20. I'd have to count it up. So if I was getting my city manager wish for the night, what I would suggest is you make it a supermajority if you're going to go beyond that 4. So 4 out of 5 need to agree with you that it is a really important item and it should be considered. Because I do agree with you, if there's sometimes things just come up and you've already used your 4, there's no reason to stifle it. But I think in my fantasy it would be 5 out of 5, but okay. 4 out of 5 say that it's important enough to pursue, then I think it probably is a valid use of staff time.
I think that makes sense, and I know that you're talking about Colonel Cagley here being the one that's he's just so many agenda items that he's pushing. It's just
all right, and I took one item back, so whatever your total is for me, you've got to subtract 1.
I wasn't looking at anyone.
All right, then I'll move the city manager's suggestion that we can go beyond 4 with a supermajority.
Yes, and that I'd like to suggest you add to your motion about fiscal year, that it's per fiscal year.
Does anybody have a preference, whether it be fiscal or?
I think it'd be easier for calendar year, because the way elections go, it would make more sense for it to be January to December.
I agree. And that's the way we start off our year anyways. With us. And next year we'll have a new mayor, and then we all come in fresh.
Okay, so there's, let's vote on, can we vote on them separately or together?
So I think at this point your motion is that the council be able to add that 5th item or beyond if 4 out of 5 of you vote for it, and that it's 4 per calendar year.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second. Please vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Next item is annual reports from commission. I think you have in front of yourself something that says city council policies.
Before you go on, I believe there was one other thing on the table 1. It was on the next page. Permit parking policy. Establishes parameters. Permit parking.
No, you're ahead of me. I'm on item number 6, annual report from commissions. I'm still on the first page.
Oh, there was no changes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're right.
Well, there were none, but I'm suggesting one.
Got it.
On a thing that you have in front of you called City Council Policies. And there I'm suggesting that instead of verbally, we make it in writing. And the reason for that is I didn't find all that much value myself in the verbal reports that they gave, and I thought if we had them in writing and we had them beforehand, we could use that time to ask them questions. Instead, we got a verbal thing, kind of short and no time for questions.
Well, that's a good. This one's come up because it's been a topic brought up by some of the community about reports coming back, and I think that the expectation, for some of us that we report things when it's prudent to the city and the residents and the safety of our city. I think I think it was Mayor Pro Tem Basil's. Was it your agenda item to bring this forth as a written report? I think that a summary of the topics of what was discussed at whatever agency, whether it be fire authority or library or TCA or vector control, and just give the topics of what was spoken about and what was done. I think that will be a better information line to not only the community but us and staff and the community.
I think you may be confusing commissions with committees. I believe you might be referring just to the Traffic Commission and the Parks and Rec.
I think he is not confusing them, but mixing them. Yeah. But I think his point applies to what I'm saying as well. So, in other words, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Like right now, I think we every twice a year we hear from the committees of what's going on.
Once a year.
Once a year. Yeah. See, I think that's good. I think that it tightened up that to where we know what's going on in our other committees too. I mean, the committees, whether it be Planning Commission or the new Traffic Ad Hoc or Traffic Committee.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. You're still, I think, confused. Like we have a committee, U.S. Marine Corps Support Committee, does not make any report whatsoever, I do not believe, but the commissions do make reports. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, we have a new Traffic Commission.
Again, I don't want to confuse committees and commissions.
Okay.
That's all. Okay.
Well, yeah, the commissions, every month we get a copy of their minutes in writing. I mean, we see what they're doing, both the Parks Commission and the Planning Commission. So this is really just their annual report, and I'm suggesting we change it from verbal to writing, independent of the other thing.
Second that.
Okay. All right, then.
You were right about this reporting that we do.
And the continuation of that is that the chair or his or her designee be available if the council has questions or comments. So that,
That was second.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's vote on that.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay. In order, the next one, before we turn the page, order of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Just to clarify, on your sheet here, you also had a note that was in bold. I just want to make sure you meant to skip over this, that the report shall include the attendance record at city events of all commission members.
Oh, yeah. I missed it. In the original, I had it in red. I had everything in red, the additions. And when I printed it out, it's more difficult to read now. Yes, and the other thing I wanted to do there that I said there, and this might be controversial or not, but I believe that the commissioners should be at events. And I know some of them, is there anybody here? Like that guy over there in the Hawaiian shirt?
He's everywhere.
Jim, no, Jim Rosenberg. So Jim is at, just attends lots of events where he, and Loretta at the last meeting, she and Jim are probably the only two people who attend a lot of meetings, and I think that's important for commission members to be in touch with people and to meet people and to be, so for me that's a value. It may not be for others, so I'd like to add that the report get an attendance record of, what city events are they attending. I would certainly look at that when they came before us asking to be reappointed, for example. So that's a...
That does seem a little controversial to me, just because when they apply for the position, that's not part of the job description, is a requirement to attend X amount of events. Although I do agree with you, it's important that they are attending because it gets them connected with the community. But maybe we could reword that a little bit to say maybe the report should include, or some other word that doesn't make it absolutely mandatory, because I don't...
Oh, how about calling it may, and that way if somebody wants to push and say, reappoint me because I go to so many meetings, which I'm sure Jim would say, and rightfully so, then that lets somebody use it if they want to.
Okay.
But it doesn't force everybody to use it.
Yeah.
But they could still be graded upon that. I mean, and we'd be judged by that when we're looking at that. I mean, if somebody, I mean, it's not a requirement now, so, I mean, they're coming in as a volunteer.
Well, I wouldn't apply this to the people who are there now, but I would let the next people going in, again, it's a value judgment which people may not share, and that's why we'll vote on it, but it's a value judgment I would have in what I'm looking for in a commissioner as somebody who's actively involved in the city. But, you know, someone else may not consider that important, and then you would vote that down.
So if I sorry to interrupt.
No,
if I remember our process moving forward properly, then each one of us are going to be appointing a commissioner. Is that right? That's the way I'm understanding it. So
right.
That could be a requirement for you and not for him, right? But it's something that we're asking about as a may, right? So that makes sense, you know. And how I look at the commissioners is there's attending city events, and then there's being involved in the community in a variety of different ways. I mean, with the Park and Recs Commission, if we had 5 commissioners who all were also on the board of Lake Forest Little League, and they were totally sports focused, then we'd have a problem there. I like to see a good balance, you know, both in age and demographic and involvement in the community. And so they may decide to put down, you know, I'm active in the Lake Forest Garden Club, which isn't a city event. But okay, maybe we're talking about a garden park, and so that's something that would be of value. And so that the may allows them to define, you know, a meeting or event or their community involvement in different ways. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of residents attend city events, but many don't. And so, you know, any way that our commissioners are engaging with residents, be they ones that are attending a city event or not, I think that's exactly what we want out of them. People who are involved in the community in a myriad of ways and are reaching residents that we don't all necessarily reach ourselves.
No, in fact, I had the same struggle, and I didn't know how to deal with that. And while you were talking, I'm thinking if we added after city events and other community involvement, because it's just as important to spend your time, maybe more so, at the Little League than coming necessarily to a city event. So
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a great compromise, because whether it be the Marine Corps Support Committee or the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts,
right?
Thank
Just
you.
sit
I
there
like
and
that. I feel comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then I'll move that addition,
Second that.
the may, and the addition of and other community involvement. We have
Second that.
First and a second. Okay, moving
That
right
motion
along.
Carries unanimously.
Order of the agenda. I thought that's probably better to begin that sentence with at the discretion of the mayor. So it says that we will change it, but sometimes we might not for some reason. So,
I'll second that.
okay. Let's vote on that one.
Councilmember Voights. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, and then public comment, which is now turn the page. Public comment, blah, 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 blah. And I'm suggesting we delete the words "or signified by applause while another member of the public or city council is speaking after being recognized by the presiding officer." I'm suggesting we delete that and add "or comment from social media." That's 2.1 under public comment.
Public comment is defined. Is that what you're just
Yeah,
defining? Okay.
it's defined as communication which may be submitted in writing, spoken from the podium after being recognized by the presiding officer, or comment from social media sources. So I'm suggesting we add or comment from social media sources, but I don't see how that other parenthetical phrase, applause, falls under public comment.
Also, the social media source, I think that's in the wrong location. The public comments defined as communication which may be submitted in writing. I think maybe, I don't know, I think putting that before mentioning the presiding officer would make more sense.
After writing?
So submitted in writing, yes. Comment, got to reword that, comment from social media sources, comma, or spoken from the podium after being recognized by
Yeah,
the
I
presiding
think it
officer.
fits better there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Comments? Okay, let's vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Now, number 3.2, you think that's covered by the Brown Act, or it says council members shall not argue with, scream at, or denigrate any speaker for any reason, regardless of provocation. Notwithstanding this provision, council members may respond briefly, offer alternative facts or opinions.
I got one-sided too.
Oh, there's a funny page.
Oh, there's a funny page.
There's a funny page. It goes this way.
Yeah.
I know.
Mr. Mayor, Council, the council can certainly adopt a policy like this that is aspirational. There's no issue with that. Of course, there are free speech rights, but this is aspirational. It's something that the council would strive to abide by. There's no problem with adopting this.
Okay. So I'll move 3.2.
I'll second that.
Okay. Let's vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay. The parking permit policy. I'll move the recommendation that we refer it to the future Traffic and Parking Commission.
I'll second.
Okay, let's vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, in the mayor's minute, I'm suggesting we change the word shall to should. The other day, I understand the mayor did such a good job, he got it in under 50 seconds. So
should be under 160 seconds?
Yeah, should fall between 60 and 90 seconds. Right now, it says shall fall between 60 and 90.
So we're going to call you the 60-second mayor?
Yeah, that's a joke for my wife, not for you.
And I wasn't going there. I'm glad you said that.
But I would rather go with the should, just because the reality may be we didn't make 60 seconds.
I'll second.
And I'd like to make a friendly amendment for the fact that whether it be Mayor Pro Tem Basil or your mayorship now, I think that being on social media on a city website, as we get closer to the election, it opens up, I think, to electioneering or the perception of electioneering. And so I would make a suggestion that we cut that off at like 90 days. I think the state of California, all communications on state and mail stops at 90 days for state elected officials, whether it be the state senate or the state assembly.
Can I ask city staff's opinion on that?
I think that's really a policy issue for the council.
Are there any laws that are being crossed by continuing it during an election season?
Mr. Mayor, Council, the way the policy is currently drafted, with the mayor's minute being vetted by staff, assuming it was carefully vetted and drafted in a way that didn't result in in campaigning, we would probably be okay, but there always is a perception that Mr. Voigt alludes to. So it really is a policy call for the council to make, but there could be a perception.
Well, let's go by extension from Councilman Voigt's comments. Does that mean that the mayor shouldn't show up at ribbon cuttings during 90 days before the election? That would...
No, I think that's typical what we do now in representing the city. I think that as a election, I think the past tradition of the city council, starting back in the early days of our city, we typically didn't elect from a council, from the dais, a council member that was up on that year, so that there would be no mayors on election year. So I think it just shows fairness to the those people that are running, and would they be running against me or you or anybody that...
Yeah, now, I believe last year when the mayor pro tem put my name in nomination, I believe she said exactly that thing, didn't you?
I did.
I believe she recommended that you vote for me for the mayor a year ago, so that I wasn't in the situation of running as the mayor, and I believe that you didn't heed her advice at that time.
Well, hindsight's 20/20, I guess.
So next time, put on your thinking hat and listen to the mayor pro tem when she gives you some advice.
This to be the perception is everything, and I think that the perception. So I think the end of August. So September and October are the only 2 months you'd be missing.
Well, once again, then by extension, the mayor shouldn't be at ribbon cuttings. The mayor probably shouldn't be up here talking to people on Facebook, and the mayor probably should be in a closet somewhere for those 90 days, so he doesn't have an advantage. Yeah, Councilman.
This just came up recently with, I think, the board of supervisors. One of the supervisors sent out a mailer, was strictly politically oriented for something. I'm not sure the entire details, but we're not talking about you making us. We're talking if you would say, "Well, vote for me for mayor," and I'm the mayor. There's a distinct. I think there's an open line there, a very clear demarcation between campaigning and doing your mayoral duties. I don't see it an issue personally.
Yeah, and what happens now actually is, so I submit a script to the city manager and to the management services, and then they look at the script, but then once we're filming it, I go off script slightly, and then the city manager swoops in with her censor and then calls me up and makes me do it again because she doesn't like the way I said something.
Do they have one of those things, take two?
Yeah, and not just take two, but we filmed it on, what was it, Wednesday, and she didn't like it, and I had to come back on Friday and film it again because I said something that was, she thought, yeah, she didn't like the way I said something or whatever. So I think as the city attorney said, there's enough checks and balances to stop it from being used as a campaign platform. But if you have a second, we'll vote on it. Failing a second, we vote on the previous one.
I'll second.
The motion.
I'll second the motion that we continue with the mayor's minute, especially if it's very clear that there's no campaigning going on. It's just, to me, it's a function of what a mayor would do for a city. It's unfortunate that, I'm happy that Mayor Gardner's mayor this year, but I would have preferred it to be last year because it definitely would have made more sense without there being a perceived conflict. But that aside, I think it's a really good initiative for the city, and I wouldn't want to see that stop for a couple of months out of the year. I think it's a great initiative.
Okay.
I agree 100%. I think that we're putting on the ballot this November, it looks like, the potential election of a mayor, and so we would be stifling the communication from the mayor at that time. I think the most important factor in all this is that proper vetting. So, it's, if I could add to the motion, I expect that they're doing it all the time, but if we could add to it that they take a heightened look at it in the last 60 days, more than they normally would before an election, I think that would kind of alleviate everybody's fears. That's all. But, I think that the comment that you made is a very valid one. The mayor should be front and center. All of us should. And, it's we all should be going to things not because there's an election around the corner, but because we're here to serve the residents of Lake Forest, and we do that to the best of our ability all the time. And so, there's plenty of different ways to electioneer, and the ability to have a video on the website as one of 1,000 different ways of doing that, I don't see as being a significant impact, even if it was used for quote-unquote nefarious purposes, right? You could use all the social media platforms that are out there, everything else. So, I don't see some tremendous benefit, but if there's proper vetting, I think that solves all of our problems.
All right, so that was your motion. Was there a second? Was your second? Okay, let's vote on that. And then there was the prior okay, let me wait.
That motion carries unanimously.
The prior motion was changing it from shall to should. So I'll make that motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
You clarify where that was?
Right now it says shall be between 60 and 90.
Okay.
It should be between 60 and 90. But if it goes 91 or 59, we're not going to do another take.
As long as you change the title to Mayor's Minute and a Half, I'm okay with that. But you have to change it each time. Just kidding. I'm kidding.
That motion carries unanimously.
All right. So, City Manager's report.
I have nothing further this evening.
Council comments. Councilmember Cagley.
Just a couple of things. One of the speakers earlier talked about the fact that there was no word put out about the lockdowns at El Toro over Friday and I guess Monday. It's a fine line you walk between creating public panic by too much airtime of a rumor that's flowing through there. When I was stationed in Berlin 40 years ago, the Baader-Meinhof terrorist gang was blowing up officer clubs, NCO clubs, DOD schools, and it became very popular for the DOD student facing a test to go with their German buddies to call in a bomb threat to the DOD to close the school and lock it down. I know it's it's a very fine line. We have to be careful. We do not want to create public panic over something that the police department has complete control over. So just cautionary. Don't make fun of them at all. They're concerned, their parents, their friends, their neighbors. But we just, it's a fine line. I don't want to belabor that point too much. It's up to the police department to gather the information and put together the plan of actions required. If there's a threat, to identify the threat. It's not up to us, particularly social media, to spread that. Remember, me, I don't use social media very much. To me, tweet is something birds do in a cage somewhere. But that's because I'm one of those elderly people that the city attorney addressed that last time. And secondly, when I was stationed in Austin, Texas, I had to go to city council meetings there frequently because of Camp Mabry. And the mayor there, Mayor Bruce Todd, would get tired of meetings at midnight and said, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, and those who are in favor of adjournment, vote with your feet. He'd get up and walk out the room. Just a comment.
Mayor Robinson? Councilman Robinson. I don't have my glasses on. That's why I need my glasses.
Like I said, never again. But thank you very much. I think we had a great productive meeting. We didn't have a lot on our agenda, but we still accomplished a lot. We're working well as a team here, so I'm glad to see that.
Thank you. Councilman Voights?
I would concur that. I think that we got a lot cinched up in making these policies easier to be read by us and where we're going to stand. And so I think it's been a great meeting, and I think it was good timing that we get out before 9:30. So congratulations. Nothing further.
That's my goal. I told her 9:30. Mayor Pro Tem Basil?
Yeah, for an OCFA update, at the last meeting, we have hired a new fire chief.
Congratulations.
He did. He will be announced officially on March 15th, so, it's just good news that we did hire somebody. So at the next meeting, I'll tell you who it is. And then this week was a fun week because Mrs. Gail Ackerman celebrated her 25th anniversary with the city. But I have to say, I'm kind of disappointed because you're not wearing your gloves. I was expecting the Queen's wave. You'd been practicing in the mirror, I'm sure, after your party. But congratulations. That's a fantastic achievement. You've been here almost as long as the city's been around, so you have a wealth of information and knowledge and mentoring you've done, and we just appreciate you. And going along with that, the reason why you are here so long is because I hear this is a pretty great place to work. There was an employee that had quit and went to work somewhere else, I won't name names, and realized how good it was here and quit his other job and came back here. And I was sitting and chatting with him during your anniversary party, and he was just saying, and I noticed his attitude was different too, because when he was on his way out, you could tell he was kind of ready for a change, but he seems like revitalized, because I think he just realized how great you guys all are, and you all get along, and you know, it's a nice place to walk into. When I see you guys every week of my office hours, everyone's always really cheerful, and it means a lot when there's a positive work environment. So you can tell because you guys, your output is enormous. So just kudos to everybody. And Gail is a perfect example of how happy everybody seems to be here. The other thing that maybe I'll work with Carlo on separate is a comment about the Cox cable. You know, especially up in Portola Hills, I see a lot of complaints about Cox. So I would definitely like to find a way if we can attract other, you know, providers outside of the Cox realm, or maybe we can have Cox come back in to a council meeting. Maybe we can, you know, kind of call them out and make them a little bit accountable to us. And the other thing was, there was an email that came to us through the city manager this week. I believe there was a resident had requested a censure. Is that correct? So in my opinion, if a resident feels so strongly to request something like that of the city council, it is our responsibility as council members to acknowledge that and to look into it. So I would like to request that this come up at a future council meeting for us to discuss and address the residents' concerns.
Does that need a consensus or a motion?
Mr. Mayor, council members, that would need consensus. The question I would have procedurally is whether this is the standard consensus procedure is for an initial item to come back for discussion, and then that then leads to a full-blown agenda item. In this case, that would mean that the initial discussion would be whether to have a hearing in the future. So just want some clarification on that.
This is the first time it's happened since I've been on the council, so I don't know the proper protocol, but I definitely don't want to overlook a resident's concern if they had one.
Okay, so her ask is for it to come to the agenda for a discussion.
Okay, we can, yes.
Okay, I'll give consensus. Anybody else? How many do you need? Just two. Okay.
And that's all I have for tonight.
All right, I got 2 minutes to get out by 9:30. That's okay. Most of the stuff I put on social media or I put on the patch, so I don't need to take up very much time. I thought tonight was a very good meeting, and I think we all, particularly the residents, have to appreciate how much we're asking the staff to do compared to how much they've done in the past or how much any other city's doing. We got a video here of, a welcome introductory video. We're doing this stuff on Facebook Live. We're about to lay on Carla's desk enough work for 2 people, to carry 2 people. So it's a lot of work, and I'm very proud of how well we're moving forward. We're working together well as a group, and the staff is taking on an enormous amount of stuff, and we're moving forward. So thank you very much to the staff and to the council. With that, good night.